Well, good morning, everyone. It's the 12th of July, 2022. Welcome to the regular council meeting. There has been, actually, as a reminder, all public meetings are live streamed and recorded. Any verbal or written information provided may be included in public documents as per the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act 40.1. With that, there has been an agenda circulated. Would there be any additions or deletions to that agenda? Seeing none, I look for a motion to adopt. Deputy Reeve Northcott was first. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Also, the minutes of the 28th of June 2022 meeting have been circulated. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I look for a motion to adopt those minutes. Councillor Melhoff, further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. That brings us down to item 4.1, and that is a delegation represented by Jim Duncan and Dennis Landon, as well as the remainder of their group. We will do a quick round of introductions, starting with Councillor Melhoff.
Good morning, Jenny Melhoff, the Councillor for Division 1.
Hello, Sydney Graham, Councillor for Division 2.
Good morning, Jordan Northcott, Division 4 Councillor.
Daryl Lougheed, Councillor for Division 3, and Reeve.
Good morning, welcome. Nice to have your presence back in this chamber, Mr. Duncan. Neil Ratcliffe, Division 5.
Brian Cermak, Division 6.
Good morning, Michelle Swanson, Division 7.
Good morning, Murray Hagan, Director of Corporate Services.
Good morning, Rick Emmons, CAO.
Good morning, Council Jim Duncan, Co-Chair for CTI.
Good morning, I'm Dennis Landon and representing Norca.
You turned off, did I? Tom Daniels, I'm the Secretary for CTI.
Okay.
Group join.
Stacey, I'm a member of CTI.
Rich Dean, the Executive of CTI.
Well, good morning and welcome, everybody. It's great to have you here. I'm excited to hear your presentation, and I'll probably turn the floor across to Mr. Duncan. He needs really no introduction here. He has spent 3 terms as councillor and a term as Reeve as well. So no stranger to this chamber, and we welcome you again and look forward to your presentation.
So, thank you, Reeve, and hopefully I don't mess up the protocol then. So there should be no excuses, right? So. Yes, we have 3 short presentations, and we will then probably have some time for questions after and any other further discussion you might want to have on some of the things we're doing out west here. Clearwater Trails Initiative has been around since about 2013, and we've brought together industry and government and the members at large. And it's been tried before, but this was the first time that industry has been part of the group, which has been a really important part because we work in the green area, which we call the vacant crown land, not in the public land use zones out west of Nordegg. And that's critical because that's so active with industry and with the public as well. And also there are not nearly as many rules as there are out west in the public land use zones. So our focus has been to try and work through those processes and create some more sustainable trails and more sustainable environmental protection out in this vacant crown land that sort of lets industry cohabitate with recreation and with the public at large. And we also have to remember that not only is industry out there, but there's the cattle grazers and the trappers as well they're out on that land and doing a lot out there. So I'll see if the clicker works here. Oh, sorry. Which one, Lana? Is no. Okay. Okay, the laser is the top one? Okay. So next slide, please. So, we often do work out on the tours and planning and stuff, but wherever we end up, we're always in these philosophical discussions and trying to work through all the processes that are out there. And it's been a real partnership, and we've tried to define our roles with government and with the public and with industry as well. And it's taken, the first work we did in the Rigg Street area, it took us a long time to work through the process, over 2 years to get some approvals to do work. And even when we went to the Meadows and started our second project there, it's still a long process to work. But we're slowly redefining the rules. We used to do all the planning and then send it in for approvals, and then they would come back and we'd have to redo things, or we'd take field visits, et cetera. Now it's more a case of government, Alberta Environment Parks is doing the planning and in the area we want to do, and it really speeds that step up, because then it's what they want to see out there and we can go ahead and build it. Next slide, please. So I'll see if the laser works. So this is the Meadows area where our current work is being done. We haven't done much in Rigg Street for a number of years there. I guess I should mention that it's not that difficult to get the funding for the capital of the project. It's really difficult to get funding for maintenance. So we end up getting projects done, but struggle to find maintenance funding. We're hoping that will change with the new Trails Act and some of the new funds that are being collected out there. So, oh, there we go. Don't look up, Michelle, until I hit you in the eyes here. It's not coming onto the screen, is it?
Oh, I saw it somewhere.
Can I do it back here? Yes. Sorry, if I can just do it back here. So right here is the North Fork Road, kilometer 32 or 39, sorry, where it meets the start of our trail. We have a kiosk there and a parking lot, bit of a camping area. And this first set of trails right here, up to this point, is the first 13 kilometers that we have completed already, and that would be all the construction and signage. The rest of the green line is our next project, which is another 40 kilometers to complete. We hope this year we'll do a lot of that. The 40 kilometers looks like a large undertaking, but it's actually a lot of the existing pipeline roads, trails that are there. It's not going to be as much work as some of what we did on the first 13 kilometers. And a major focus in the Meadows area is repurposing logging roads for trails. So Tom and Wes Fraser have been busy logging this area for a number of years and are getting closer to the end of their current projects out there. And we're hoping that these roads repurposed will last many years. If they have to go back in and do some more logging, we can send the trail back to a road again. And they can complete some more work, and then it could maybe be a trail again after that. But general idea is just to coexist and use the same same disturbance on the same land. The issue from an Alberta Environment Parks point of view is that requires a disposition on top of a disposition. So to be a legal trail and to be recognized and designated, it needs a disposition on it. So part of the new Trails Act is defining ways to make that happen, because we have to actually, to protect the trail and to be able to close it during wet times or bad weather or timing, so you're there after July 1st when it dries up. You need to be able to have a legal disposition on to do that sort of work. So that's part of the process we're working through as well, is to clear up those and find ways to do that work. Next slide, please, Landon. So there's a varied amount of topography that we go through out there. Some of it is actually just clear cut. It's been reseeded. This would be one of the viewpoints. We have 2 viewpoints on this trail that allow us some fairly large vistas. And this will grow up, so this is going to change over the years as well, right? We'll see different things on this trail. Next slide. Whenever we meet roads, the trails are offset a bit, and you'll see we're going across clear cuts here again. And we're building these trails to a really high standard if we can, just to make sure that they are easier to maintain, they last a long time. They are actually quite wide, so we have to actually stop vehicles from traveling on them in some cases. So where it crosses a road like this, we now have installed steel posts on the side of the trails that limit the vehicle to 6 feet wide, so that nobody else can, hunters, et cetera, just can't take their vehicles down the trails. Next slide, please. The example on the left is an existing road that we could repurpose, and we do repurpose it into a trail for a while. The trail itself is on the right where it leaves the road and goes up the hill there, but just an example of what those roads make great trails. And sometimes they'll be reclaimed to a trail width, and in other cases they may be left to a road width yet. Next slide, please. So our equipment of choice has been a track hoe and a small cat. just to work in. Meadows is very rocky, lots of, you can't do this work with shovels. People have been doing that for years, but it doesn't lead to trails that can really stand up to the test of time. And the large volume of traffic that we're seeing out in the West Country now, it's increasing every year. So whenever we can, this is what we would use for that. This area we actually had to log before we went in there, and it worked out well. The logging actually paid for itself. We were able to sell the timber back to West Fraser, but it doesn't pay for the cat work and that. Very expensive work building trails like this, but they last a long time. And our current source of funding, of course, has been the FREA money, which is a direct from West Fraser. West Fraser puts funds into their forest resource. Sorry, Tom. Forest
Improvement Association.
Yes. They're required to put money into this funding, into projects that benefit the forest, but they get to direct where that funding goes. And West Fraser's chosen to send some of their money to us on this, so it's been worked out well for building the trails. Next slide, please. And same with the bridges. We were, that's one of the key points of trail building is to keep people out of the water. So whenever necessary, we've been putting in some bridges. So they're constructed off-site and then hauled in and put across the creeks, but high standard of bridge, made only 6 feet wide, and then the ramps leading up to them on each side. Next slide, please. Just another shot of the bridge. They're put in with treated post pilings and set on top of that, and high enough to not wash away. This is just typical of the small creeks up there in Meadows Creek. Next slide, please. Just back to the 40 kilometers here. Now that clicker's working. So on this, what we're constructing here, a lot of this is on a pipeline, and we come back on a road. But down in this area where it gets close to the sketch, remember this is actually an old county road allowance. It's the old Saunders-Alexa Road, because right across the river, right here is the old rail line, and the Tauntaun Bridge is right there. So you can actually see it from this side of the river. We have a trail that goes down to the river's edge there. But that's how close we are to being able to join, except for the river, onto the Nordegg Trail. And then it goes through some other area. It actually finishes on a power line here, which is Alta Lane. So Meadows, we are very pleased to work there. Like a great place to work. Very little industry, just the one pipeline, the one power line. There's no oil wells up there. And makes it easier for us to work. There are cattle and trappers up there, but we've taken made the proper contact with them as well. Next slide, please. Just one last little slide. This is I keep track of what it costs for the planning side of it and the construction side of it. And this is sort of up to date on the Meadows, where the first couple of years was spent in the planning section. And at one point we had somebody hired that did a lot of that work for us, and he was out there doing a bunch of collecting of data and initial contacts, et cetera. The last couple of years has been just straight construction. So as we shift toward the provincial government doing more of the planning and us more of the construction, we should see that shrink. And to be fair though, everybody around this table is a volunteer. So there is a whole bunch of planning time. And, I did a little bit of it at council's cost back in the day, but a lot of volunteer too. But that is not shown in here as well, right? There's a lot of in-kinds. West Fraser has donated a lot of time for their mapping people, planning people, and helping supervise the bridge construction and installation as well. So it doesn't show up. So it's never going to be a cheap business. But we hope it'll be a sustainable one, and with the proper funding that comes in place with the new Trails Act. And eventually there probably will be a off-highway vehicle requirement for a pass as well, right? And that, as long as the funding goes back directly to the OHV crowd, they seem to be happy to do that. We do, lots of, these trails are built to a standard that they can be used for horses or walking or pedal bikes as well, right? We're at that level of standard. So it's not that we're only for OHV, it's just that they're built to that level of standard. Next slide, please. And ending on a more personal note, I just wish to thank council very much for the presentation I got of this Sasquatch carving from a chainsaw. And it's got a nice place in my garden at home. So much appreciated for what happened over the years with the Sasquatch program. All right, I will just turn it over to Dennis and his presentation can come up then.
Okay. As the Norca one? Oh, I sent the Norca presentation to Tracy. Didn't come through?
Councillor Melhoff may have a
Yeah,
question.
thank you, Eve. In the meantime, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to ask a couple of questions. We are currently working on a resolution for RMA in the fall regarding the West Country camping fees and how they're going to be allocated, et cetera. Perhaps there's an opportunity for us to look at adding some of your initiatives to that, or at least add them to the conversation.
Mr. Duncan.
Yes, thank you. Yes, currently what the provincial government has done, and I'm not exactly sure where the money came from, if it came from the camping fees or not, but they have designated the Alberta Off-Highway Vehicle Association as it's kind of an umbrella group over all those. They've given them a fairly significant amount of funding, it's $1 million or $2 million, and they are distributing that to groups like us out there. We haven't got any yet, but we will eventually. We're just slow at doing our paperwork, getting everything in. So that is one way they seem to be approaching. I was surprised at that a bit because I didn't think they would ever do that. But this group is getting, like, there could be another group that gets funds to distribute amongst the pedal bike or the mountain bike people. There could be another group for equine as well. But it's, at one point, AOHVA was asking to be the umbrella organization to distribute funds to everybody in the province, no matter what kind of organization you were. And that was a number of years ago. It didn't fly very well because the appearance wasn't there that the money would get evenly distributed to other groups. So, but yes, I'm not sure Councillor Melhoff, how to exactly approach that other than it's important that for sure that funds be available for maintenance of these trails and capital as well. The province is still very siloed, right? All the capital projects that have been done out in the West Country recently, if you've been on Highway 11, all the new bathrooms and parking lots and stuff, those are capital funds, but they're throughout the Parks Division is all the capital work. So even though the local people here, their operations, if they want to do that things, they have to submit that into the parks budget for the capital part, and then they get the operational part or the maintenance part out of their own budget. So it's still complicated. I would certainly say red tape reduction has to be key, and we've participated in a number of those initiatives as well, trying to reduce the red tape, and some of the work we do does that. I guess probably in a resolution, I wouldn't specifically address funding to any one group, but just, funding available for and distributed, groups out there. And, my last comment would be, I've heard the comment over the years that Clearwater County could be a distributor, an in-house distributor of funding and kind of the umbrella group that looks after what's happening in Clearwater County. At least but my putback on that was that requires that Clearwater County probably has another person on staff, right? So the funding can't just be for projects, it's gonna have to cover all those administrative costs as well. So, and it's been frustrating over the last number of years. The province, they talk about these things, but we don't get included as much in the discussions. There's a lot going on behind the scenes there, but it's not that we're always included in those discussions as they work through how they want to approach this whole recreation management out there.
Right, and I'm hoping that this resolution will deal with that with the garbage, with the increased search and rescue, increased fire services, all of those things. And perhaps this can be a part of that conversation, because the whole reason for having the backcountry camping fees would be for initiatives such as yours as well. So
and that's right. And we've talked over the years, about that. I don't remember, Councillor Swanson would remember how we're trying to look for those, just the same as the highway accidents, right? The ability to charge back for something that happens in the backcountry that Clearwater County is involved in, if it's search and rescue or whatever happens that we take part in the management out there. Absolutely. Yeah, but you have to remember though, it's not our land out there either, right? It is provincial land for the most part, but we do have a say even in planning and development, right there along the corridor especially, where at least we get to comment, which is great. So yes, anything you can do to comment and make things better would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Thank you, Reeve. Thank you for bringing this, this information to us. I didn't realize that we had already developed such an extent of trails back there. So I'm really impressed by the work you and your group have done in pulling all of this together and making it happen. Is there a plan? I have two questions. Is there a plan to be able to cross the river with that trail at some point?
There's certainly ways to do that. We talk about that, and yes, it would be great if somebody, an entrepreneur would develop a ferry for OHVs. You know, a bridge is probably a little bit tough because of the way the water works out there, the rise and fall. But I think the key here for council would be this development of Saunders-Alexo. Yeah. Once there is commercial development there, that's right in the same spot, right? So then there's possibly opportunity to get people across the river. There are plans also to make the trail extend from where we are west all the way to the trunk road, and then it can go along the trunk road and come back into on that side of the river as well, right? It's tough on the south side of the river going west, but on the north side, it's, you know, it's there because of all the Bighorn trails by the Bighorn Dam and stuff. So we'll wait and see on that. But it's, you know, it's a big investment, right? To do, and it would. But we'll see how tourism develops out there.
Okay, my other question is there a way for the public to easily access maps to be able to find and use these trails?
Maps have been an issue because these are the vacant crown land. These trails are not designated, so you really legally can't put a map out there saying this is a trail to access. If our Meadows Trail is on the list to be one of the ones that's approved under the new Trails Act. So if it's approved under the new Trails Act, then absolutely we can start putting a map out there. We did a little bit of the mapping stuff for sort of unofficially for Rigg Street. Yes, there are certainly many social media ways, you know, Avenza, et cetera, that you can put these maps out there and people can access them and have them with them on their phones as they travel. And that's a call we get a lot. I know I talked to Jerry about that on occasion as well, and the Economic Development Group is really interested in having that kind of ability as well. I don't know if, Tom, if you have a little bit more on the mapping or not, but
Yeah, I think you're right. We need to work through the administrative part with the province. And then once we get through that, then certainly we can start maybe we'll have a dedicated website that people can go download the map and put it on their phone.
And Councillor Swanson, please.
Great segue, because I was thinking about maps and thinking about apps, and I was thinking, of course, with the Alberta Realm app that's already out, that could be a trails portion there. And my question was going to be about, you know, are these trails GPSed and in order to upload in regards to on phone app. My other question is, I know in BC there are snowmobile groups that have a day use fee, and that helps towards the maintenance of the trail itself. That could possibly be a consideration in the future. I know it's on an honor system there, but they have heavy fines if you didn't register per se on the trails. So I don't know if that's for consideration or if you guys have talked about it before.
I haven't really considered that one. Yeah, just for the sake of how do you collect that? You know, even if it was the honor system, you still have to have somebody going out there every few days or whatever it is to empty the box. Otherwise, you're probably putting a new box out.
If Rogers doesn't stop it, e-transfer.
Right. That's true. Actually, yes. I never thought of that. You're right. And with the realm, that's certainly possible. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I suspect at first, at least, it's going to be the one pass, like the camping pass, where you access all the trails for a certain fee per year or 3-day pass or something.
And I'll go back to Division 1.
Thank you, Reeve. We're currently working on the area structure plans for the Electra Saunders area. So definitely would reach out to planning or have planning reach out to you guys so that we're not building a plan that isn't going to work with your system or what you're trying to build, so that we can all be working on the same page. So that would be great.
Yeah, certainly the rail trail is part of that, right?
Yeah.
And you're right there right now, the rail trail. So that's going to be a key part of Saunders-Alexo is the rail trail.
And I might just comment before I go to Councillor Cermak that I've certainly been impressed with the quality of the trail system there. I hope it's going to be well used and well enjoyed by the greater community over the years. Is there opportunities there for signage or sponsorship, anything that would kind of recognize those people that have contributed so much to this, you know, remarkable trail system that's there, and an ability to kind of really give a little tip of the hat to those people?
Yes, we certainly have staging areas, and there's one at Nordegg too at the industrial area, right? There's a staging area there, and we have staging areas on all our trails, and there's a kiosk. We build or have a kiosk installed there, and there's some recognition that we'll be putting up at those places, you're right, to recognize individuals, especially like West Fraser that has donated the funds. It's all part of the plan. Yeah, communication is key, right, for that. And we've also been installing some watershed signage as well. So I didn't have a picture of that, but from my time on North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance, and through help with Land Care, we've developed some sort of, you are here in the North Saskatchewan watershed, and this is a critical drinking water for many people. That sort of signage that brings to people's attention this environment is critical for all through the North Saskatchewan river system.
Well, thank you for that. I'll go to Councillor Cermak.
Yeah, the only question I have is it the federal or the provincial government that's doing the survey in the bighorn sheep out there? I know that they have a catch pen out there just west of the Meadows cabin. Are they still involved in that? And is this going to affect this trail very much?
Well, that's on Ram Mountain for most of the sheep work, I believe. I don't think there's anything below. Yeah. It's a university from Ontario. Actually, I went to school with the professor that's up there doing the work. Marco Festa has been doing there for many years, doing some of the sheep studies. But that's part of the whole planning process, right? Is that we need to sit down and have that bigger picture discussions, is that we're not going to put trails in this area. Like, don't even come and ask us if we can put a trail here, because this is a critical wildlife area for sheep or even grizzly bear habitat. But this, you know, we have to define those areas in Clearwater County, that this is an area where we can build trails because the terrain is good. There's not other underlying issues like bull trout or mountain sheep that are going to cause issues that we don't want to exacerbate to be more complicated than they are. So, and that's difficult to do, right? Because that sort of planning takes a lot of time and money, and it's looking at large areas. We're sort of biting this off one bite at a time, and sometimes, yes, that's not the best way, because suddenly you run into a wall where you can't go somewhere, but you want to know, yes, you want to know in advance what's happening out there, and and the industry has issues as well, right? We don't want to be putting a staging area right beside a sour gas plant or something like that, right? We want to make sure everybody knows what they're doing and what their future plans are in those areas too. Not only for what they're doing, but for cleanup in the end. So if we can turn an unused pipeline into a trail or an unused logging road into a trail, all the better.
Okay. So they have had their input into it with the sheep?
No, we've not been anywhere near them on the Meadows.
Okay.
We're a long ways from being up on Ram Mountain there. Yeah.
Even
that along the west side there, we're still significant distance from really being up on the side of the mountain there.
Okay.
I think West Fraser is probably going to be closer than we ever get with some of the logging up there that they're doing. So.
Yeah, well, we've been working not with the university, but with the province about our harvest areas that are up against where the sheep range really is, and they're looking at the expansion of the sheep range into our cut blocks. So we've been working on access management with them.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, thank you very much. I can definitely see the importance of planning, and the energies put into planning leads to the success, I think, that you've demonstrated so far. So I appreciate that. I see Mr. Landon, I think your presentation is ready to go, so I'll give the floor to you.
Okay, thank you. And my apologies, I think that was a technical glitch on the sending end. So I'm pleased to be here this morning, and thank you for having me to represent NORCA and the Black Mountain Trail Network project we're working on. I'll start with a little personal introduction, just a little bit of background. My role in the community is primarily that we ended up in Nordegg because I'm the director for an outdoor leadership program through Prairie College out of Three Hills. And we run that program from Frontier Lodge on Fish Lake, out by Nordegg. And so I've been running that program with my wife for about 11 years now. We used to be in Montana, and then we came up to Nordegg. This will be the 7th year, starting in September. And so we've been up in Nordegg now 7 years, and I've been living out here full-time and loving it. I'm from Red Deer originally, so this is not too far from home to begin with. I've gotten into mountain biking pretty actively since being up in Nordegg, so about the past 5 years. And there's a growing and very passionate and excited mountain bike community in Nordegg and Alberta, and growing throughout, well, North America, but Western Canada for sure. And I'll get to some of the relevance for the mountain bike network in this area. There are trails out in Nordegg, but there's nothing designated specifically for mountain bike. It's all multi-use trail, and a lot of it is old trail that isn't particularly well-built or sustainable in nature, and then is also accessed by multiple user groups, and so has different issues with erosion and challenges that way. My background, I did a master's degree from Notre Dame University in nonprofit administration, and have been working for Prairie College, and now I get to the role of being president of the newly formed NORCA organization. And so I'll just talk about NORCA first here. NORCA stands for the Nordegg Off-Road Cycling Association. It's a very newly formed group, just in the past year. And we've got together, and the primary purpose statement is that we exist to promote and support the development, use, and maintenance of sustainable, accessible off-road bike trails in the David Thompson corridor. And the core values that guide us: sustainable trail building. Like I mentioned, a lot of the trails that we're dealing with out in the area are not sustainable because they weren't purpose-built. They weren't built to any specific quality. A lot of the trails on the backside of Nordegg are on the north-facing slopes. They have quite a bit of water. They have quite a bit of moisture, and we're continually dealing with erosion problems there. The other side of sustainable trail building is that we want them to be done legally and done right. And a lot of trail building in the area also happens covertly and not authorized, and those trails aren't protected. And so if logging needs to get done or oil and gas work gets done, those trails are not mapped or protected by anybody, and so then they just disappear. And so we want these to go through the right process, the right channels, and be built properly and be able to last over the long haul. Rider education would be our next guiding principle, and we want trails that are not just for, and it kind of relates to accessibility, not just for expert riders, but trail network that you could educate people on from beginner up to expert. And so we want to have that kind of range in our area. And that connects with my role with the college program in Frontier Lodge, is that we start with beginner riders, and then we try to develop them and develop character and develop a love for the outdoors and develop a skill set and fitness. But you have to start at the bottom. And so you need trails that allow you to progress from bottom up. And then accessibility, we want this to be an area that riders and enthusiasts from all over the province, regardless of age or ability, can come and enjoy and access. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more in the specific Black Mountain Trail Network. So why develop a trail network specifically? Like I mentioned, mountain biking has been on the rise, especially with COVID, has seen quite a significant boom. Especially the sale of e-bikes. I was just told the other day that 1 out of every 2 bikes being sold from bike shops right now are e-bikes. And so that's giving a lot more mobility to groups, user groups that didn't have potentially the fitness to access some of the further back or more difficult trails. And now with the advent of e-bikes, those trails are becoming much more accessible to all riders with that. The other reason is many riders, including us from Nordegg, typically do the majority of our mountain biking in BC. BC has been way ahead of Alberta in terms of having large trail networks and using that as a major tourism draw. And so Edmonton, Red Deer, Saskatchewan, us, we all turn and go to Golden, we go to Valemount, we go to Revelstoke, and it's a shame because they're driving right by us and we're leaving to drive there instead. And so if we could have that trail network, that quality of trail network in our own backyard, we'd be much better off for it, both for our own mountain biking, but also from a tourism and development standpoint. We see this being a great resource for local riders and organizations like Frontier Lodge, COE, Gila, all the different user groups that might want to consider Goldeye, consider using mountain biking, Red Deer organizations. So it'll be a good hub for those types of groups. a boost to tourism and development. And we were told, this is from the Valemont Group, so I don't know who quantified this stat, but every dollar spent on trail building and maintenance brings $5 back into the area. And that's what they've found in the Valemont build, is they've developed out their bike park too. So we see this having some pretty big benefits for the local businesses and community of Nordegg. So the Black Mountain Trail Network, if you're not familiar with Black Mountain, it's 16 kilometers west of Nordegg, so not far there. Gonica Ridge is kind of the first rocky mountain you see as you head into the corridor, and Black Mountain is just before that. It's kind of, itself is a little indistinct, but I'll show you a picture of it in a second. It was the site of provincial mountain bike races in the 1990s, so it has a history of mountain biking. Those trails, some of those trails were lost due to logging, and then I don't quite know exactly what the history is, but a lot of the trail development shifted over onto the backside of the town of Nordegg, which again is north facing and has a lot more moisture problems than the south facing slopes of Black Mountain. So that's what Black Mountain looks like from Gonica Ridge. So it's not your most impressive distinct mountain, but it actually works really, really well for mountain biking. There's existing trail on it already. Both quad trail, that's primarily used by the trapper. There's some logging road from West Fraser, but then there's the old bike trail from the 90s. Has excellent soil for trail building, a good mix of clay and aggregate. Really good terrain for slope, a lot of it in that kind of gentle terrain, which works well for mountain biking, and then also a few steeper sections, but for the most part, the whole mountain could be utilized for really good trails. And then the other really good thing we like about it is that it's low user conflict. It's not an area that has a high degree of off-road vehicle use. It doesn't have horses going back there well, it has wild horses, but not user groups using horses. West Fraser's back there logging, and there's a trapper on the other side of the mountain. But otherwise, it's not a contentious area to have specifically mountain bike designated trails as their only use or primary use. This is just a little bit of a sketch of what the trail network might look like. We're in the process of developing out phase 1 and then working with the trail builder and the government and lands to develop out the rest of the network. But we propose to put in 50 kilometers of mountain bike trail, ranging from beginner and inclusive accessible, meaning that it would be good for the 4-wheel adaptive mountain bikes, which are what people who are in wheelchairs need to use to access mountains. And so we'll have trails available for that. And those trails are all year-round functional, so they're about 6 feet wide. And they can be groomed in the winter for fat biking, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. So a number of the trails at the bottom of the mountain will be good year-round, which is good because we have long winters. A lot of the other trails as you go up the mountain and they get steeper and you're coming more down the fall line would be more mountain bike downhill specific, and they'll be built to be flow trails that could be, which is the more kind of common style of trail. Some will be the old tech style, which is narrow single track, rooty, bouncy, that style. And then there'll be a lot that are these kind of big machine built flowy sort of trails. And why we like those trails is that they're fun for all kind of not maybe your rawest beginner, but as soon as you progress a little bit, anybody can ride down them. And if you go slow, you can just kind of navigate your way down. And if you go fast, you can get air and you can challenge yourself. And so they kind of have a large amount of scalability in their difficulty. And then we'll have some more technical difficult trails for the expert riders too, and some jump lines, and then long cross country rides back up the valley and so we're hoping to put in all that sort of trail on the mountain. So 50 kilometers of trail would be just a phenomenal add to the area and would put us ahead of Valemont in terms of the amount of trails, not in front of Golden, but it would give us the same kind of type of trail that Golden has. And so again, Golden's a great place and people will still go there, but now you don't have to go there to get those types of trails. You can come to Nordegg. Our current status with the project is that through the FRIA Fund, working with Tom and Sundry Forestry Products, we've been given approval for $1.82 million to do this trail development. We're just working on finalizing government approvals with Don Livingston and his office. We are planning to start building trail in September, late August, early September, and do the first 5 kilometers this year, and then probably looking at the next 2 summers to finish out the build. We're partnered with CTI to help do this. Obviously, being a brand new organization, on the funding end, West Fraser was definitely more comfortable working with an existing and experienced group that's established. So CTI has been very gracious in being willing to partner with us to help execute. And then we're partnering with Brady Starr from Golden, and he's the guy who's built all our favorite trails in Golden to come build trails here. So he's a very accomplished builder, has world-class trails, top demand. He was building trails down in Kananaskis and Crow's Nest Pass last summer and this summer. So a very familiar builder in Alberta, but high-quality trails all across BC as well. And I have no specific ask this morning, just like Jim was mentioning, maintenance is kind of the future concern of this network. And obviously, building it is one thing, and then keeping it in high-quality shape is another. And so we're pursuing a number of different avenues to get funding for maintenance into the future. Corporate sponsorships, we've already secured a lot of support from different businesses to say that they'd be willing to support it. And I think we can raise a decent amount of money that way, both Edmonton bike clubs, local Nordegg businesses, some Rocky business. The Trails Act might provide some money. But one consideration, and we don't need to start doing maintenance yet, we haven't even started building, but would be to put it on the table of saying, is there something that the county would like to participate in with this project, potentially in the stream of maintenance funding? And so the only kind of comparable I have is that the town of Hinton provides $15,000 annually towards the maintenance of the Hinton Bike Park, and they do external fundraising to maintain the Hinton Trail Network and Bike Park as well. But that's a number that might be worth thinking about in the next year or two to contribute. Because I do think the benefits for Clearwater County and the town of Nordegg are going to be pretty substantial from developing this bike park and so this trail network. And so if we can keep it in high quality, top shape. And to be clear with the maintenance, some of it will be volunteer based. User groups like Frontier Lodge will go out and clear trees off the trail and rake stuff out. But there is the need for professional refreshes every 5 to 8 years, depending on the type of trail and use and that sort of thing. And then you want to bring in a crew that has the skill and expertise and tools. And so that we need to start building up funds so that we can do that when the time comes. So that's the network, and I think all I have to share with you this morning. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are, or pass it over to Tom if that's next.
And a question from Division 1, please.
Thank you, Reeve. Are you guys partnered with the Baseline Mountain Club at all? They've been operating out here for quite a while and seem to have like a decent handle on poker rallies and that type of stuff, and a pretty good name. So as far as I am aware, because I'm not a mountain biker myself. Yeah, we approached them and asked if they wanted to be partnered together, and they voted no. So we're not at this point. Okay. So that's where we're at right now. So we'd be happy to work with them if it makes sense, but for now we're happy to do their own thing and let us do our own thing. Okay. Yeah. Can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. You said you're currently in the process of getting designation similar to where CTI is at with some of their trails. Mm-hmm. Would a letter of support from this group help yourself or the CTI team?
I don't think from Don Livingston's office's standpoint, I don't think it would be. And I think from Free and West Fraser, I think we're far enough along that's not needed, but appreciated, but I'm not sure it's needed at this point.
It's good to know that there's an offer there if that's what that is, but I don't think at this point, it's just a matter of working through the process. I think designation is not going to be an issue, it just takes a while.
Okay, just a timing thing.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I will go to Division 7.
Well, congratulations on the receiving the money. I think this is quite exciting to have that that group and formulate that tourism spot that I think, like you've identified, that we do lack out there. My question is in regards to the group that comes and that goes to Belmont and Golden. What types of businesses, because we're going to have commercial properties that'll be available in Nordegg, what kind of commercial businesses would be attractive to the bike users out there? Like, I'm trying to think outside the box here and saying, let's make them stop in Nordegg first before they head out on the trails. So just curious on that.
Yeah, on bike crew, well, there's a few different types. There's the guys whose bike is worth more than their car coming out, and they're trying to do it as cheap as possible because they spent all their money on their bike. But for the most part, it's a pretty, you know, I'm just thinking we're running mountain bike camps out at Frontier Lodge this week, and so one guy came out with all his kids. You know, he's got his, you know, a professional from Edmonton, good paying job. They're looking for stuff for the whole family to do, and you know, the older boys are going to go ride the big trails. The kids are going to ride the easier stuff, and so there's kind of those family amenities that we're still lacking in the area. And so with the trail network, we're hoping to have, you know, the easy trails so that the young kids can ride that and have fun, and the older kids can go off and ride something else, and you can kind of all be in the area. But in terms of amenities in the town of Nordegg, you know, accommodation, a place to get, like the Miners Cafe is great, and there's the lodge, but in terms of like going and getting a good burger and like that kind of food, we're still limited options. And then there's kind of all the spin-offs you can do when you bring your family out and you come out to mountain bike, but what else do you want to do while you're out there with the whole crew, right? So, you know, accommodations is still something that we have certain options for, but a broader range of options I think would be good for some different budget points and comfort levels. Some different food options would obviously be something in the long run that would be a big win. And then some, I really think the town of Nordegg, I mean, this is maybe just me spitballing a little bit, but in terms of what you can do, let's say dad really wants to bike a lot and mom doesn't really want to bike a lot. Does mom have a good time out there? You know, and so what are the other options in the area for kind of amusement, recreation, kind of enjoyment that isn't necessarily all the going hiking or biking for the day? Yeah, it's a bit of a vague answer, but there's some real money coming behind mountain bikers, and they usually like to come out for a weekend, and so there's the opportunity to get them to stay and to spend, for sure.
Additional questions?
Just one.
Go ahead, Mr. Duncan.
That, just to point out to the county, that is a county road going into the Snow Creek campground, right? So there potentially exists some costs there to upgrade or maintain that road if there's an increased use, particularly if people are camping up there and stuff more as well with increased trail use. Just to put it on your radar.
Again, an opportunity for additional questions.
Tom has a brief update.
Yeah, that would be terrific. I'll turn the floor over to
Sure.
Tom then. Go ahead, please.
Yep, well, thank you. And I appreciate the question about the support letter and so on. But I think some of the things one of the things that we may ask for from the county is we know that you have discussions with the province, and from a CTI perspective that we think that we can help facilitate the development of a regional plan on recreation. And as Jim alluded to, I'll be a little bit more terse maybe, that we're a bit frustrated because that was part of why we started up a CTI, because we didn't see the government taking seriously, I guess, the amount of recreation that we have in this area that, as we've heard, has had a real negative impact on the county because of the number of reports by the media, generally those people that don't respect the environment. We've been trying to build a system here that we can get people back onto sustainable trails, get them out of the water. We have what people would think of as a great trail network. It's really seismic lines that many are not built, well, they're not built for recreation. They go through muskegs, they go through creeks, they go through a variety of different things. I think there's an opportunity, and we've been talking about this for quite a while, as Jim alluded to, that much of the trail in the Meadows area is on old logging roads. We're working with the Norca group around some of our harvest plans and so on. There's tremendous amount of benefits of the infrastructure that we're creating. I think we could have an awesome trail network throughout the county area. And I'm not talking about trails everywhere and every logging road is going to be left open, but I think what we'd like to do is start with a bit of a plan. So maybe this area connects to here and this area connects to there, but unfortunately, the longer we delay, the less the opportunity, because we're reclaiming roads at a pace that is keeping up with what we're building roads. And as we get into those areas, we're losing opportunity. And we've lost some great opportunities of some roads because you have one individual, as an example, in government that basically would put a kibosh to it. And it was unfortunate in the one case. We thought we had a great opportunity for mountain biking and ATVing, on one of our road systems that provided access into some pretty cool areas in the province with very little damage or impact on environmental, wildlife, etc. So I think you guys helping us to develop a bit of a regional plan would be a good thing for this county. And the last thing I just want to talk about is that, you know, the maintenance dollars, there are dollars available through that FRIA program. The difficulty with it is that any FRIA project has to be completed within a 5-year period. And so that FRIA account is not always flush with money. There's times where we haven't had any money in the FRIA account. And so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to support that with Weyerhaeuser, another company that I think you're familiar with, has expressed interest in helping out with this program. And I think Dennis did a really good job on getting commitments from various businesses on having commitment of maintenance dollars for the maintaining of the trail once it's built. And that was one of the things that we asked as a company, because we wanted to ensure that if we're going to build a trail and invest money in a trail, we better make sure that we're going to be able to maintain it and it just doesn't go into disrepair. So there's a couple of things there to think about, but certainly I think the county has an opportunity to try to help provide some leadership and direction to the province in making sure that we get a good plan developed for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Melhoff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. As I mentioned, we're working on the area structure plans for Alexo Saunders. We're also working on the area structure plans for those other development nodes as well. Perhaps there's an opportunity while we're doing those area structure plans to kind of integrate some of your guys' recreational plans and the general recreational plans for the entire West Country into those plans. That may be a little bit bigger scale than what we had originally planned on, but perhaps that's something that we can put into our strategic plans going forward as we look towards the West Country area. Just some thoughts. And then I had one other kind of idea maybe. I know that when I was in Revelstoke last, they had like an Adopt a Trails program where you could literally buy like a sign to put that you adopted this chunk of trails. Perhaps that's something that we can work towards going forward, and maybe that would help with maintenance, just as a thought.
Yeah, to the Adopt a Trail program, the province used to have a program like that, and there's I guess the historical signs are still out there. The difficulty was that you had an individual that adopted a trail, and with depending on where that trail was, there could be considerable ATV use of that trail, and they were spending too much time and energy fixing up the damage that was created by some of the other users. So it was a good program in that you were a designated adopter, but there was no funding or anything to help out those individuals that had a tremendous amount of use on those trails. Yep, and there's some pretty well-used trails that were under that Adopt a Trail program.
Additional questions, comments? Well, I can certainly appreciate the difficulty dealing with the province where they have a much publicized emphasis on reducing red tape, and sometimes the practical approach hasn't worked well. So we will continue to lobby that province to help us with West Country planning, and I appreciate your efforts and work to that end. And I certainly appreciate your efforts on the trail system and the proposed trail system with the bikes. I think that's very exciting news. And really, I can only commend your efforts. It really increases the functionality and the attractiveness of our larger community to people coming here to enjoy that resource we have out west. So, I think the motion here was to receive the presentation for information. I would be looking to entertain such a motion. Councillor Cermak? Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor then? That's carried. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I think it's an appropriate time. We'll take a 10-minute break back here at 10:10. Well, welcome back, everyone, from our recess. Moving through the agenda, we're down to item 5, as more specifically item 5.1, I believe. So that is Rocky Gas Co-op request for grant funding, and that's relating to the Nordegg natural gas supply. So looking across the room, I think I'll go to Mr. Bisson, please.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed, and good morning, Council. In the last couple of years...
Maybe I'll hold, I think, Councillor Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. As you guys are aware, I sit on the Rocky Gas Co-op board. I was not a part of the last conversation due to the perceived conflict of interest with this particular item. And for my council's comfort, I will do that again today.
Thank you for that. And I'll go back again to you, Mr. Bisson.
Okay, thank you. So in the last couple of years, Clearwater County has met several times with Rocky Gas Co-op to look into the feasibility of bringing natural gas to Nordegg. Initially, the intention was to partner with the Rocky Gas Co-op to co-locate infrastructure required for natural gas with the broadband project currently being undertaken by the county. Unfortunately, due to technical inconsistency as well as time and funding constraints, this proved to be unachievable. Instead, Rocky Gas Co-op is requesting grant funding from the county in the amount of $1.4 million in order to bring natural gas to the area. The project is estimated to cost approximately $1.7 million for supply lines from source to regulating stations. The Rocky Gas Co-op is committed to funding the remaining project costs, approximately $300,000, through their own financial resources for this step. Rocky Gas Co-op is also committed to funding the next step, being lines from the regulating station to residences and businesses. The project is anticipated to be broken down into phases beginning in 2022. The gas co-op is asking for $600,000 to be paid in the third quarter of 2022 and the remainder of the $800,000 to be paid in 2023. The grant request was reviewed by Strategic Planning Committee in closed session at its regular meeting held on June 20th, 2022. After returning to an open session, the committee made the following resolution. Motion was made by Councillor Graham that the committee recommends council grant Rocky Gas Co-op's request for grant funding in the amount of $600,000 for 2022 and $800,000 in 2023 to provide natural gas services to the hamlet of Nordegg, and that was carried. So it is staff's recommendation that council approves the Rocky Gas Co-op's request for grant funding in the amount of $600,000 in 2022 and $800,000 in 2023 as recommended by the Strategic Planning Committee to provide natural gas to the hamlet of Nordegg. Thank you.
And thank you. Questions for staff? Councillor Cermak first, and then I'll go to Division 7 after that.
If the county is going to be paying $1.4 million out of the $1.7 million, is that saying that we're the major shareholder in this pipeline? And if so, what kind of return do we get on our money?
I will look to Murray, Director of Corporate Services, Murray Hagan, for that.
Mr. Hagan, please.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. Good morning, Council. To answer your question, Councillor Cermak, this would be a grant from the county. It would represent no ownership interest whatsoever in the pipeline, nor an ownership outside of a regular membership in the gas co-op. So we would have basically no asset there. It would be a contribution to the gas co-op to facilitate this construction, and the gas co-op would own that pipeline.
Supplementary?
So do we get a linear tax out of this being in our ground out there?
There will be linear assessment applicable to that in the future, so that will be a revenue source for the county.
So that's the only revenue we get for the $1.4 million investment.
Correct.
Plus we'd have natural gas to the town.
That's probably the more significant issue, is that it supports council's intention of developing the hamlet of Nordegg.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll go to Councillor Swanson, please.
I have a couple questions, but I do want to just address the fact that if this council is supportive of developing the hamlet, I mean, we've just put in a multi-million-dollar fiber out to the hamlet. I mean, it just makes sense that we're continuing on that line of bringing everybody, or the opportunity for more residents and businesses to be out there. So, especially to their commercial core that's going to be for sale in the new year. Do you have an approximately number of existing that the co-op, Rocky Gas Co-op has for existing customers right now? I'd like to know about how big it is, and if they've done an informal survey as to how many customers, possible customers they could get in Nordegg as well. I don't know if that's been explored.
Mr. Bisson, go
We
ahead.
do have some folks here from the Rocky Gas Co-op. I'm not familiar with that information being provided, but perhaps I could turn it over to one of the delegates from the gas co-op.
Well, good morning and welcome.
My name is Lynn Webster. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee for Rocky Gas Co-op. Just to answer your questions, we have just shy of about 3,300 customers currently that are burning gas. We have not done an informal survey yet in Nordegg, but that is part of the process that we will do. We do anticipate some turnover, and all new builds will be natural gas at that point. I'm not sure what else to tell you.
Thank you. And I'll go to Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. I think this is one of the remaining infrastructures that we're missing in being able to reach the vision that council has developed over the years for Nordegg. So I feel we have no option but to go ahead with this. So I would like to make the motion that council grant a request for grant funding in the amount of $600,000 in 2022 and $800,000 in 2023, and that we approve a budget adjustment to increase the planning and development operating expenses by $600,000 and transfers from the Nordegg restricted surplus by that same amount.
Thank you for that motion. Questions relating to that motion? Councillor Graham, please.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. Not so much a question. Councillor Cermak, I appreciate your questions. I think our heads are at the same place with this topic from judging by those questions. The reason that I will be voting to support this motion is because I think that if we do not do this, it's going to be a waste of all the money that's already been invested into Nordegg. We know that there are other outside investors who want to come in, but they need this to do that. So I think that it is unfortunately necessary to continue the growth of Nordegg. So that's why I will be voting in favor.
Thank you. Additional comments, questions? I would just say that I think it's absolutely essential. We've had a strong planning element within the community of Nordegg, and we know there are some additional costs when we act as developer in a more remote community. We know that some of those things that are taken for granted in the more developed areas, we have to be the developer here. So I think this is an opportunity to work with the Rocky Gas Co-op to provide services we know are essential for economic development within that hamlet. So I will be supporting it. Deputy Reeve Northcott, please.
Alrighty, good morning. I was just wondering if there was any, for businesses, for future development of businesses, if there have been any businesses that have showed letters of support or anything like that, that they would develop in Nordegg if there was natural gas there.
Mr. Pratt?
We have a hotel that's interested in going, but until they have high speed and get natural gas, it's a no-go. They have to have those to heat a hotel, and everything they need via propane is just not possible. And this is a company that's already invested in Nordegg and wants to do more. We've been in talks with other businesses that want to develop on Main Street, but doing propane is very difficult there because the setbacks required by having propane storage changes the type of building they would build versus being able to have natural gas. They would be able to take better advantage of the full lot. And so the longer we postpone this, the later investors or developers would come to buy on Main Street in particular. It also impacts the future development of the homes. We already have new homes being built out there using propane, but people are they're waiting for natural gas, because again, that determines what they can do on that lot. Not an official letter of support, but we already have the business that wants to build a hotel is a business that's already built other properties out there over the last several years. And in talks with others who are interested as well, but they're waiting. If that investment isn't made in natural gas, then those other investors will be backing off.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Councillor Cermak, please.
First off, I'd like a little breakdown on the 600,000 and the 800,000, and when they hope to have this pipeline in and serviceable up to the reg station.
I'll follow on Rocky Gas Co-op again to answer that question.
Well, good morning and welcome.
Is it on? Okay. I am Jim. I'm the construction supervisor for the gas co-op. In regards to the 600,000 you're inquiring about, there's a lot of planning. I just listened to the trails committees talk about all the planning, the costs involved in all that stuff. This again is through a green area. There's a lot of regulatory bridges to cross, environmental, planning of how we're gonna get it through. Anybody that's been out there is well aware of the rock around Shundra Creek. The fiber optics people, as Murray can attest to, had some challenges going around in that area along the highway. So the cost, the money up front is asked for more planning and stuff, and maybe if we're lucky, knock on wood, possibility of getting some of the bores done this winter.
And the 800,000?
The 800,000 is the remaining amount where we're requesting, and that will be for the completion of the construction and stuff to the regulatory station, as into the submittal contract that we submitted to the county.
Okay. And that will be finished to have the pipeline to the reg station and ready to operate by 2023? Late 2023, early?
That is our plan, depending on the environment, Department of Highways, how soon they get back to us. I can't tell you that. I can't give you an exact date right now. And a lot of construction places can't give you those dates. It's depending on supplies, contractors, stuff like that, regulatory issues. The reason we're asking for the 600,000 is so that we can, after this meeting, if you guys agree to this, we're gonna go and approach Canlin. We're gonna go and approach the highways. We're gonna go and approach Sustainable Resources, and I'm gonna take another look at a road to try to get it through there. The one thing I would ask is, there was talk of another access going into the town. Now, is that new access to the east of the existing one, has that been finalized?
Mr. Emmons?
Thank you, Reeve. At this time, no. We have our own regulatory process. That is through an environmentally sensitive area. So we're also dealing with Alberta Environment, acquiring permission to get that secondary access through.
Perfect. So is there a timeline you think that you'll have that? Because it'll depend on the routing we take. We would like to parallel your access road going in there.
Absolutely. Depending on how this meeting goes, I would strongly recommend you contact Mr. Eric Hansen and get the details. He's the Director of Public Works for Infrastructure, and he's been working closely with the province and would have the most current information for you.
Right, because we'd like to be able to accommodate the people with the trailers on the east end by the quarry and stuff, and then bring it in down there past your water treatment plant. The other thing I want to bring up is Rocky Gas is footing a lot of the bill to get the line up to Elizabeth Avenue, and that is a very challenging. I talked to the manager of the crosscut that put that line in, and I asked him how that went, and he said it was challenging. So, you know, I mean, it's not as if we're asking for an ice cream cone here. We're just asking for something that's fair.
Okay. Additional questions
Yes. Sorry.
related to the motion?
Yes, it is. So we won't have a pipeline probably not ready until 2024 to be able to service our customers if we have some ready lots available by then.
You know what? I can answer that question next spring for you.
Okay.
I can't.
Yeah.
We haven't, you know, I mean, I haven't given a second thought since the time we looked at a route and we talked to Murray about the route and the road and stuff. I haven't given a second thought because this job has been on, off, and I said, you know what? I have lots of other stuff to do. Once you're committed to the funding, then we'll look at it. Okay. So, you know, realistically, it might be earlier, but I would say sometime in the first quarter of 23, we should have an approximate completion date.
Okay, thank you.
One more?
Okay. The 600,000, we're gonna take it out of the amount of money that we've got out there already. Where's the 800?
I'd probably go to Mr. Hagan. I believe there is a funding source. Mr. Hagan, please.
I would suggest the same funding source, and this is something that council will have an opportunity to consider during strategic planning for 2023 as well as budget deliberations for 2023. I'm suggesting the Nordegg reserve, as this represents council's further investment in the development of Nordegg, not dissimilar to the construction and other utilities that the county has put in order to support that development. So the hope would be that continued future lot sales will continue to replenish that reserve as time goes on.
Okay. Thank you, Marie.
And I'll go to Councillor Ratcliffe and then I'll come back if you have another question.
Thank you. Okay. Just to give you a break, would Rocky Gas consider building some of the distribution side of this in advance of completing the line to the regulator station?
Go ahead.
Sorry, that goes on automatically. I guess I see some of you pushing them. Somebody's been real nice to me. Anyways, there is some of your infrastructure is in place. There's a line at the trailer court by the quarry that's already been put in. There's one up at Elizabeth Avenue that the county had a third party put in there for the residential area. We just worked in conjunction with the county to service the area around the church and the commercial area. So there's a fair amount in there already. If you're regarding the residents on the north side of the highway there has been no discussion about that. We're looking at, you know, having a riser site or something there to feed that if there is enough demand for it in there. The essential stuff to get the commercial stuff, and there's a lot of new houses going up on Elizabeth Avenue. We have numerous contractors that are putting the gas lines in, asking for the gas lines in there. So as soon as it's there, they want it, right? So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll go back to Councillor Cermak, please.
Okay, this isn't a question, it's more of a statement. When I came this morning, and after reading everything over the weekend when I got back from holidays, I was dead against this. But taking a look at it, with all these trails that are happening, all of our subdivisions we're gonna be constructing, new roads out there, this is gonna bring a whole lot of people into this area, the trails, the new development, all of that. I can't see any way other than I'm gonna vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I guess I appreciate what you've said, because I believe that we have a great responsibility to provide for a safe community. That's one of the biggest fiduciary trusts we have, is to do that, and I see that by reducing the number of those large propane pots within that community that is essentially a wildland urban interface, that we can provide for a safer community, and that has great value within this grant as well. Deputy Reeve Northcott?
Thank you, Reeve. I'd just like to say that I completely agree with Councillor Cermak's comments. I do have concerns with rising interest rates and world economy and stuff like that, but I also don't like to see projects that are sort of half completed. So, yeah, I have very similar views and thoughts as Councillor Cermak, but yeah, I will be supporting this.
And Councillor Ratcliffe?
I just wanted to say one last thing, that I think Rocky Gas is a great example of a community-owned cooperative utility, and that working with them on this is the right answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Additional questions? Go ahead, please.
I just have one, thank you for that comment, Councillor. I'd just like to table this, that if you guys agree to this, through Eric, I'd like to get in conjunction and work with him in getting access through that sensitive area there. That'd expedite our ability to get the gas in there to some of them customers.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions? Seeing none, I am ready to call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Takes us down to item 5.2, and that is first reading of bylaw 1125/22 for application number 05/22 to amend the land use bylaw. And I believe I will be going across the room to Mr. Bisson again.
All right, thank you again. So Edward Vandermeer currently holds title to Plan 832-2665 Block 1, which is part of the Southwest 13-37-6 west of the 5th, containing 24.32 acres. Bruce Schuecknick currently holds title to the Southwest 13-37-6, containing 110.95 acres. Subject land is located 5 miles north of the village of Caroline on Range Road 6-1 or the Caroline North Road. Edward Vandermeer, with the support of Bruce Schuecknick, has made application to redesignate 15.46 acres of Plan 832-2665 Block 1 Lot 1, along with 2.5 acres of the Southwest 13-37-6 from Agriculture District to Industrial District. The total 17.96 acre area to be redesignated is outlined in red on the attached Schedule A. The applicant has also applied for the combined boundary adjustment and subdivision in conjunction with this land use amendment application. The applicant's intent is to redesignate and create separate title to the land being used in conjunction with a sawmill operation registered as Ted's Timber Limited. The existing business purchases timber and mills it down to lumber of all dimensions and sizes. The applicant has existing contracts with West Fraser and a few other companies located in Calgary. Pending the outcome of the land use amendment, the landowners will proceed with a proposed boundary adjustment to consolidate 2.5 acres of the industrial district zone land contained in the Southwest 13-37-6 with Plan 832-2665. They would then subdivide the 17.96 acre industrial designated lands within Plan 832-2665. This would leave an 8.80 acre designated agricultural district remaining as Plan 832-2665. Legal and physical access to the proposed industrial parcel and the remainder of the ag land will be from an existing joint approach off of Township Road 37-2 adjacent to the south property boundary. Legal and physical access to the Southwest 13-37-6 can also be obtained by way of Township Road 37-2 as well as Range Road 6-1 adjacent to the south and west property boundaries respectively. The sawmill has operated from the subject lands for about 40 years. Equipment and material are currently being stored on the proposed industrial parcel, which also contains a shop as well as a small office building. The landowner's residence is located in the west central portion of the subject property. The residence will remain on the remainder of Plan 832-2665. There are two other agricultural parcels taken out of the Southwest 13. The two parcels are located northwest and southwest of the subject lands affected by the combined land use amendment and subdivision application. Surrounding land uses in the area are mainly agricultural, with a few gravel extraction sites surrounding the property. There's also a couple of residential parcels in the surrounding area as well. Therefore, this application is to rezone the subject land to an industrial district parcel as shown on Schedule A of the bylaw. As we go into planning direction, the county's MDP, one thing that we want to consider is land use compatibility. We want to encourage the diversification of the local economy. When it comes to evaluating subdivisions for development proposals that affect ag land, agricultural quality of the land is one of a number of factors the county should consider. Some other factors are the nature and extent of farming activities in the area, especially within the immediate area. The location, number, and type of existing planned non-farm land uses located and proposed to be located within the local area, impact on sustainable agriculture, farmland assessment rating on the subject land and adjacent lands. We want to promote locally appropriate economic development to diversify the local economy. We want to encourage the retention and expansion of existing businesses and industry. Throughout the land use bylaw, the county shall provide for a variety of industrial land uses within the county at a variety of locations. Industrial and commercial land uses that are appropriate for business parks should be located within a business park. However, the county may approve a proposal for an isolated industrial parcel if an isolated location is requested, the site characteristics are suitable for the proposed land use, and the development can be serviced on site in accordance with provincial regulations. Clearwater County shall require the development to meet provincial standards when it comes to wastewater and wastewater services. The county may require an area structure plan. The ASP could address any of the following: site suitability, impact on natural capital and the environment, traffic impacts, and other matters that may that the county may be required to be addressed, just to name a few. The county could also request the following be completed by a qualified professional engineer: a geotechnical study, a traffic impact assessment, a stormwater management plan, just to name a few. The county will consider the following when it comes to redesignating or subdividing lands: impact on adjoining and nearby land uses, impact on the natural capital, including ag lands, scale and density, site suitability, road requirements and traffic impacts, county responsibilities that may result from the development. The county's land use bylaw, I've included the general purpose of the industrial district, which is to accommodate industrial operations for appropriate for rural locations. Policy considerations, the redesignation of the proposed land is to separate an existing business, Ted's Timber Limited, from the remainder of the subject property. The east portion of the subject property is currently being utilized as a milling and storage yard for materials and equipment for the business. The west central portion of the property is being used for residential purposes. Access to and from the property is via Township Road 37-2, which is a county-maintained graveled road, adjacent to the south property boundary. The proposed use of the land is too intense to be classified under the current zoning, which is agriculture, and is better suited under the proposed industrial district. So our recommendation is that council consider granting first reading to bylaw 1125-22 and proceed to a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bisson. Before I ask for any questions, I think it'd be appropriate to have a round of introductions, so I'll go to the member from Division 1.
Perfect, thank you, Reeve. Jenny Melhoff, Division 1.
Hello, Sydney. Oh, Councillor for Division 2.
Good morning, Jordan Northcott, Division 4 Councillor.
Good morning, Darrell Lougheed, Councillor from Division 3 and Reeve.
Good morning, Neil Ratcliffe, Division 5.
Good morning, I'm Brian Cermak, Division 6.
Good morning, Michelle Swanson, Division 7.
Good morning, Murray Hagan, Director of Corporate Services.
Good morning, Rick Emmons, CAO.
Dustin Bisson, planner.
Teddy Vandermeer, landowner, I guess.
Well, welcome. I know there were a few lights on, and I'm trying to remember who was first before we reset, but I'll go to Division 1.
Thank you, Reeve. This appears to be the legalization of an existing business, not necessarily the development of a new one. However, will this be enough space to now meet the requirements that will be put forth, i.e. water retention for fire suppression that has been an issue in previous timber development?
That would be a question that Regional Fire would have to address as part of their referral process.
And I'll go to Councillor Swanson, please.
I see there right now, there is a joint access to the property, the residential property up top, as well as to the current business. Is that the plan in the future, is to continue with the joint approach, or will there be two separate? Actually, the next page. One more, sorry. Where there's one more in advance. Maybe it's another one. Sorry. There's one where it's like a triangle that it's being consolidated. Yeah, that one. Yes. Because I would imagine that that small triangle is going to get on where the red.
I know what you're talking about there,
Yeah.
that little triangle piece there.
Yeah.
When I did the first subdivision, because my dad owned the whole land up there, so then his property is the one that you can see with the brown roof on there.
Yep.
So when they did the first subdivision, they misdrew the lines, so actually that little triangle piece is where his services for his house are at right now, right? So they have to be consolidated back in.
Okay.
And his access for his property is actually that gravel road that goes up and around.
Okay.
There is a boundary adjustment application that will be coming to, I believe, the August Municipal Planning Commission to deal with that portion of land.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll go to Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. Yeah, my assumption is this is mostly housekeeping changes. Do you recall if that land was ever used for agriculture?
No, it never was. Cause it was all just a giant clay hill there, right? And over the years, I've leveled out some spaces to make it more workable ground for the application that we're using it for.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And I'll go back to Councillor Melhoff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. What is the catalyst for legalizing the this development?
So, as it was specified in the application, it is to separate the existing business operation from the residential use of the remainder of the property.
In order to sell the residence?
I believe that is
I'm making that
correct.
assumption.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Swanson, please.
I'm ready to motion if there's no further discussion.
Sure.
Okay, I'll make the motion to grant first reading to bylaw 1125-22 and proceed to a public hearing.
Thank you. Additional question, clarification around the motion? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that brings us down to item 6.1, and that was with Agriculture and Community Services, and it's relating to the Cheddarville Cemetery request for grass mowing services. And we're joined by Mr. Martinson, Director of Ag and Community Services, and I will turn the floor over to him when he is ready.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. Good morning, Council. We are here to discuss the Cheddar All Hallows Church and Cemetery Society request for annual grass mowing services from the county. The council may recall several years ago we supported the project to move the church to the Wheels of Time Museum in Caroline. And so this community group has been going through a little bit of kind of a process of sort of re-centering themselves on managing just a cemetery now rather than a historical building. Part of the catalyst of moving that church out was because of concerns around dwindling volunteers, which we see across all aspects of our community, unfortunately. Though, I think, maybe we've bottomed out a little bit. I think it's not surprising to us that this request has came. It's very common that grass mowing burdens down these community groups that are managing properties. It's a significant undertaking for one neighbor with a residential sized lawnmower to manage an acre or two of grass, especially on a year like this where we have significant growth and significant moisture to deal with. Another challenge for this cemetery is that it is located on a very busy highway. That makes it really difficult for a neighbor to commit to just wheeling down and doing it. Often we send our children to do that. Most people aren't comfortable sending their children down the highway. It's fine to go a quarter mile up the gravel road to mow the grass. So those are some of the underlying causes for the cemetery to believe they're at a position where they need to ask the county for support. We believe that taking over the grass mowing is a prudent thing to do because it maintains and protects the capacity of the community to keep records, to sell plots, and to manage other day-to-day aspects of the cemetery that ultimately would likely be turned over to us if the group went defunct. And those sort of functions would likely cost more than our very large-scale grass mowing operation. We're pretty scaled up to do that because we manage many acres of grass on behalf of the county for our satellite operations as well as our waste authority solid waste services. And so as well as we have taken on cemeteries over the years that have been burdened to the point where they can no longer handle. And I do have a list, if we could scroll down a little bit there, of the current cemeteries that we manage. My apologies, the original agenda item sent to you did not include Hesbro. That was an oversight by me. They are on this list now. So we currently look after Garth, Horse Guard, Leslieville, Evergreen, Hesbro, and Gates within our grass mowing program. We estimate that a full season of service to the Cheddarville Cemetery would cost the county $600 to $900 per year worth of wages, fuel, and blades. That's all I had to share about this item. Be happy to take any questions.
And we have a couple of questions. I believe Councillor Melhoff was first.
Thank you, Reeve. Not really a question, just it to me seems, I don't want to use the word no-brainer, but it really does seem like in order to remove some of the burden off of that group to allow them to continue on with the other responsibilities, that this would make sense. Also, it gives us the ability to ensure that the weeds are kept down for the adjacent agricultural operations that are happening around there. So I will be voting in favor of this.
And Councillor Graham, please.
Thank you, Reeve Wahid. I would echo what Councillor Melhoff said. It seems completely appropriate for us to do this. We're doing it elsewhere. It's a small lot with minimal weed whacking. It's gonna be a quick stop for those guys. I'm willing to make the motion that council approves Cheddarville, All Hallows Church and Cemetery Society's request for annual grass mowing services at Cheddarville Cemetery.
Okay, additional questions relating to the motion before us? Councillor Melhoff, please.
Thank you, Reeve. Do we know how many other cemeteries are not currently being serviced by us?
So the county has 15 cemeteries within the county, total, including these. So there is 7 on the list, so we're right now looking after about half of them.
Thank you.
Looking after the grass. So the Nordegg Cemetery is ours to look after, to manage, so that is a little separate from that. We sell the plots, we manage the layouts. The rest of them are community operated, and these ones we manage the grass. The other 6 or 7 are looked after by the operational groups. For these groups, including Cheddarville Cemetery, should council approve their request, they are required to do 1 community cleanup a year in the spring, which includes picking up the tree branches, garbage, maybe doing a little bit of fence fixing and stuff. So we're sort of just looking after the grass. We still want them to come out in April or May and do that initial sort of spring cleanup. And this sort of shores up resources for that as well. And we see good cooperation with most of our cemeteries in doing that. There is a couple that are down to 1 or 2 volunteers. They are having trouble maintaining their society status to have a quorum at an AGM and do these things. So it's sort of a couple hanging by a thread there, but for the most part, there's enough volunteers to come to AGMs and take part in more one-off events like cleanups. Just the weekly grind or every 5-day grind right now of keeping that grass down is the challenge.
Great. Additional questions? Councillor Cermak, please.
So you have sent out a letter stating that they have to do the cleanup in May or April or May?
Yeah, after, should council approve this, there'll be some communication back informing them of council's approval and formally stating that. But staff has discussed with the community group what the expectation would be should council approve this. They've explained the process of taking their letter to council and ultimately be up to council. But to answer the question, yes, we will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I vote in favor.
Okay, additional questions? I will call the motion. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Martinson. Finishes item 6. We're down to item 7. I see we're joined by Mr. Hanson from Public Works, so I would assume we would go to item 7.1, which is June 28th, 22. Notice of motion, item 12.1, Highway 11 twinning between Rocky Mountain House and Highway 22. So good morning.
Good morning, Reeve. Good morning, Council. So briefly with the background, as the Reeve just alluded to, at the June 28th regular council meeting, Councillor Melham gave notice of motion as follows, that council directs administration to reach out to the company completing the study for the Highway 11 twinning between Rocky Mountain House and Highway 22 South to gather information on this project. A little bit more history. As council may be aware, SEMA Plus is the consulting firm that has been retained by the province. They're currently completing the functional planning study for Highway 22 to Benalto. The consultant that is working on the Town of Rocky Mountain House to Highway 22 is AECOM. They are working on that section from a planning perspective. So it is our understanding that the Highway 22 to Rocky Mountain House does not have a functioning planning component. It's just the consultant using a land agent firm to deal with the landowners directly. Also that being that the functional planning study has not been completed, that they can't complete that section between Highway 22 and Rocky Mountain House until that functional planning study has been completed and all those options have been fleshed out. So I guess with that, I've also added a link to the Highway 11 twinning, the provincial website and the information there, as well as the consultants and all their contact information. And that brings us back to the recommendation that council considers the following resolution, that council directs administration to reach out to the company completing the study, AECOM, for the Highway 11 twinning between Rocky Mountain House and Highway 22 South to gather information on the project. Happy to answer any questions.
And I'll go to Councillor Melham, please.
Thank you, Reeve. I made that notice of motion, and I'd be happy to make the motion again today. The reason that I did this is when we were at the Highway 11 twinning open houses, that are town halls that they did, they referenced the routes that they took were based on the information that they were receiving from the 22 to Rocky Mountain House section. We have zero information on that, and the landowners are already, as you stated, being approached. They've been reaching out to me and asking, what we can do as the county, and I said I don't have any information to be able to advocate for you or give them any insight as to what this project entails. So I was hoping that we could use our channels to get information gathering so that we can better advocate for our residents. Because if we don't know the information, we can't advocate for them or defend the province's position either. We have no way of doing either one. So this will give us the ability to do those things. So I would be happy to make that the motion that council directs administration to reach out to the company completing the study, AECOM, for the Highway 11 twinning between Rocky Mountain House and Highway 22 South to gather information on this project and better advocate for our residents.
Okay, thank you for that. Additional questions, clarification? Deputy Reeve Northcott.
So just if I have this correct, I was unable to attend those open houses. But so right now there's currently no information available to the public for that section between Rocky Mountain and Highway 22, between Rocky Mountain House and Highway 22.
Mr. Hanson, please.
Yes, that's correct. So like I said, there is no functioning planning study or public consultation for that portion between 22 and Rocky Mountain House. They are dealing with the landowners directly.
Yeah, so okay, I guess. So would AECOM still be in their initial stages of gathering information before they have, public, like a presentation for the public or anything like that? Or are they still just maybe in those earlier stages or?
Yeah, from what I understand, they've started initial conversations with the landowners, but they're actually at a standstill now until the functional planning study is completed so they can actually advance their project.
Right, and I guess what I'm trying to get at here is maybe if we're trying to request information, maybe the information just might not simply be there yet if we're too early in the stage, and they don't have their information gathered.
That could be accurate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll go to Councillor Melham.
Thank you, Reeve. We have landowners that have been contacting me being told this is how much of your land we need for this project, literally trying to buy their land already. So they clearly know way more than they are letting on if they're already trying to purchase the land. So we can't advocate one way or the other, whether it's advocating on the province's behalf, going, no, this is the best route, this is the best for the community, or on our landowners back to the province saying, no, this doesn't, like, you can't be doing this to our people. So we don't have the information, but they obviously do, or they would not be buying up the land, or at least not attempting to buy up the land, and they wouldn't be utilizing that section of highway as a way to determine how they're building the other section, because that's literally what they said at the open house, that they had to choose, they're choosing the routing for the Highway 1120 between Rocky Mountain, or between Highway 22 east, based on what they know from 22 to Rocky. So they obviously have some kind of information, they're just not sharing it.
Additional discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? That's carried. That takes us to item 7.2, and that is a tabled item. Clearwater County Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility Project Tender Award. Do we need a motion to lift from the table then? I would be looking for that motion. All those in favor? And that is carried. So that motion is lifted from the table, and I'll turn it across to Mr. Magnus, who has joined us from Public Works.
Thank you, and again, good morning, Reeve Lougheed, Deputy Reeve Northcott Council. As was earlier indicated, Council tabled item 7.1, Clearwater County Regional Leslieville Wastewater Treatment Facility Project Tender Award to the July 12th, 2022 regular council meeting to allow time for administration to bring forward any information that might be gathered from Alberta Transportation regarding status of outstanding grant applications. So since then, administration has had the opportunity to meet with Alberta Transportation to gather further information in regards to the status of the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Grant. The grant in and of itself, just to give a little bit of background associated with it, it funds eligible water and wastewater projects each year depending on available budgets and needs provincially. Typically under this particular program, the water treatment facilities are considered the highest priority, with wastewater treatment considered the next priority. Administration has applied for the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Grant for the Regional Leslieville Wastewater Treatment Facility in 2019. This project has been in the system and will remain in the system and reviewed each year until such time that we either receive an approval or not. Applications for funding are typically due at the end of November of each year to receive funding for the following year. In our conversation with Alberta Transportation, they advised us, as they do with most municipalities, that typically we cannot start construction prior to approval without jeopardizing potential grant funding. Now, this particular project is broken up into two parts, one being the enhanced treatment, and the other one is the lagoon upgrade itself. So the lagoon upgrade itself, that funding, if you start construction on that prior to receiving the funding, then it's the possibility that you will not receive funding whatsoever. The earliest we would receive funding for that would be 2023, which again is not guaranteed. In regards to enhanced treatment, AT made note that the enhanced treatment and pilot testing construction could occur with the potential for grant funding after the technology has been approved and endorsed as acceptable by Alberta Environment Parks. We are able to start construction on that without jeopardizing the fund itself or receiving a grant. Again, it should be noted that it does not guarantee funding or represent a commitment for funding at this time. So given that, in regards to the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Program grant, simply said, there's no guarantee that we will receive funding for either the enhanced treatment or the lagoon upgrade. If we receive any funding, the earliest we would receive notice of it would be in the spring of 2023. In regards to the Alberta Innovates grant, I know a question was posed with respect to that, and of course back to the motion itself when it was tabled, and what would happen to that grant if we were to delay construction or to postpone the project itself. So in summary, the grant in and of itself is an agreement between Alberta Innovates AI and Magna Engineering Services Incorporated. The grant agreement outlines milestones and payment schedules. The milestones are as follows. So upon execution of the grant, a payment of $300,000 is received. So that was upfront cash given right off the bat. And the purpose of this is meant to fund the current milestone. Secondly, milestone 1 is for detailed design and phase 1 construction with an end date of April 15, 2023. The milestone progress final report is to be completed and submitted to AI by May 15, 2023. Once the report is received, Alberta Innovates contribution is $50,000. At that point, we're looking to milestone number 2 is for construction and commissioning, monitoring, optimization with an end date of April 15, 2024. The milestone progress final report is to be completed and submitted to Alberta Innovates by May 15, 2024. Once the report is received, Alberta Innovates contribution is an additional $100,000. And finally, milestone 3 is for monitoring and optimization with an end date of April 15, 2025. The milestone progress final report is to be completed and submitted to Alberta Innovates by May 15, 2025. Once that report is received, Alberta Innovates contribution is $50,000, and at that point, the full sum of the $500,000 will have been received. Again, it should be noted that the $300,000 payment has been received and is meant to fund the current milestone. Consequently, a report will need to be submitted outlining how the money was spent between now and next March 2023. It is, in essence, a prepayment for work. In addition, any delays to the project, which would be delay in meeting the milestones for funding, would need to be approved by Alberta Innovates. Finally, as an additional note, the current contractor, the low bidder, advised that the pricing, in regards to the pricing that was provided from the recent tender, will be held until the end of July 2022. After that, the contractor will not be able to avoid the impacts of a 2 to 4% cost increases that they are currently seeing each month. I will leave it to council for discussion.
So, thank you. Questions? Councillor Melhoff, please.
Thank you, Eve. Where do current rural residents send the vac trucks or vac truck companies to dump on that side of the county?
Actually, it's at the discretion of the vac truck operator themselves.
Okay.
When we have ours clean out, they actually send it to, I believe, outside of the county in the Neckville area, somewhere there. We know of many residents as well down south. Again, the vac trucks take it into Mountain View County and dispose of it. The other option too is the Rocky Lagoon.
So we are adding a dumping station to this lagoon. So that would potentially allow another option for those companies to dump, and therefore less mileage potentially to the rural residents' bills of having their systems sucked out.
That is correct. This facility in and of itself will have the capability to accept external hauling.
Thank you.
And Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. Just want to clarify my understanding of the options here. And that would be that inflation is the only real driver for us to proceed with this now? Like, what other risks are there in waiting till we get provincial grants for this project?
Mr. Magnus.
Definitely, you're looking at the potential for price increase, inflation coming. The grants as well, if we proceed with construction in regards to the lagoon side of it, the lagoon upgrade, then it risks us getting getting a grant for that, right? As well as, whereas the enhanced treatment side of it, it is in the system, and beginning construction on that portion will not jeopardize us getting a grant. Ultimately, it's still at the discretion of the province whether or not we get that grant. Keeping in mind their priority are water treatment facilities is their number one priority. Second then is wastewater. But then they also look at where they sit provincially in terms of the money they have and their budget in terms of disbursement of funds.
Okay, thank you. I have another question.
Sure, go ahead, and then I'll go to Councillor Melhoff.
There isn't any regulatory requirement for us to move at this time, is there, to proceed?
We are grandfathered, so right now we're still okay. However, having said that, there's always the potential for Alberta Environment Parks to give us the heads up that we do need to now upgrade our lagoon. And that can come at any time. We've always put it in since my time here, we've always put that in the books somewhere in our 10-year plan that it's, we consider that. We have to account for that. This lagoon will need to be upgraded at some point. Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm going to go to Councillor Melhoff and then back to Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Reeve. If we delay this project, will it delay the connections of the surrounding communities such as Withrow, who currently has their septics affecting their drinking water? Will that delay those tie-ins?
Potentially, yes. Our intent is that this facility be built in such a manner that once completed, we have the ability to tie in those communities. So once we delay that, yes, then we delay the ability to tie in those communities if the need arises and it's pressing to, yes.
Can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead, please.
Do you have any indication of how long that particular community, as I know Withrow is one of the ones that is suffering the most from potentially contaminating their drinking water? Do we have any idea of how long they can go without being connected to a system?
Myself, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure as to the status of each of the residents and where they sit with regards to each of their septic systems, so that would be difficult for me to answer.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. My only question is that just if staff is confident with this lagoon system when it's not something that's in Alberta very much, and do you guys feel confident moving forward with this system?
Yes, if there was any hesitancy of any sort, I don't, we as administration would probably not have brought it forward as an option.
Okay.
I guess a question I would have, we have a number of wastewater lagoons that we are already, or septic systems that we're already responsible for. Can you remind me, are those ones up to standard now? Have they been recently brought up and they're no longer grandfathered? Maybe if you could just outline that.
Sure. Yeah, and you're absolutely correct, Reeve Lougheed. The most recent one we did was Condor Lagoon, so that's been upgraded and it now meets all regulatory requirements as set up by Alberta Environment and Parks. We have the one out in Nordegg, and that one was established to meet all requirements right from the get-go. So no problems there. The only one that is remaining is Leslieville, that is currently still grandfathered. Just an additional note in regards to Councillor Graham's question on the confidence. With any treatment facility, it needs to meet Alberta Environment and Parks approval process as well. And they were very thorough in regards to assessing this facility and this treatment method. And they have signed on and given us the approval on it. So that is another level of confidence for us as a municipality as well.
Okay, and I will go to Deputy Reeve Northcott.
Thank you very much, Reeve. For the upgrades at the Condor and then the Nordegg, lagoons, did those projects receive any grant funding?
Yes, the Condor Lagoon, when we upgraded that one, we received the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership Program. We did receive funding for that, and that was, I believe, up to 75% of that cost of the upgrades. Now, historically speaking, when we established the Nordegg, and our CEO, Mr. Emmons, can potentially speak to this as well. I wasn't here when that system was put in place. I'm not entirely sure as to the funding received there, but that was a new system in its entirety when that one was established.
Okay, thank you very much. So there is a high likelihood that there could be possible grant funding for the upgrading of the Leslieville Lagoon. It's just in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna say there's always that possibility. Ultimately, it's at the province's discretion.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
A comment I might make before I go to Councillor Graham is that if you have been fortunate in receiving a grant, that sometimes doesn't work for you in receiving the next grant, because they know you've overall, because we do manage those wastewater facilities, that, you know, province may look at seeing that you had help with this one. Maybe you don't need quite as much help with this one. But it can also be that we just have terrific grant writers here, and that we are always in the front of the queue. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Reeve Lougheed. I definitely, one side of me would really like to wait and see if we do get that grant, just because that could potentially save us a lot of money. But I think that we need to move forward with this for a number of reasons. As Councillor Melhoff mentioned, people in Withrow are suffering, and we can put an end to that by putting this system in and hooking them up to it. We could potentially lose the grant that we've already been approved for, so we're kind of counting our chickens before they hatch. If we wait for this other grant when we already have one, the increase, who knows where. The world's a little wild right now with inflation, so who knows where we could be next year with the rates to do this. And we also, last meeting, we did the allocation of the 2021 surplus, and we put that money in the fund to do this, so we do have the money to do it now. And for those reasons, I think we should choose option one and move forward with this project.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go to Councillor Ratcliffe and then back to Division 1.
Thank you, Reeve. I guess my feeling is the opposite on this. My understanding is that there's a low level of urgency to move ahead on this. Spending 10 million for that on our own, that would be without grants for that relatively small population, I think is very difficult to justify. So I'm in favor of options 2 or 3, that we hold on this project, carry it forward into next year, and that we wait to get a provincial grant to proceed, unless otherwise required.
Thank you, and I'll go to Councillor Melhoff and then back to Division 7.
Thank you, Eve. I worry that if we delay these projects, one will increase the cost. 2, it's not meeting legislation. The lagoon is not meeting legislation. I also worry that it'll snowball projects. We're gonna have to do a whole bunch at once. I know that the town will be doing theirs, and I'm sure we will be contributing to that project, or at least being asked to contribute to that project. An amalgamation with the village, should that continue to proceed, will involve potential infrastructure upgrades and requirements there. So having this also on the plate, then we'll just add more projects and more projects. I would be in favor in continuing with this project as well, to, 1, for that community, 2, to make sure that we don't snowball projects on our administration.
And I'll go to Councillor Swanson.
This particular project is just for the Leslieville Regional Station. That does not include the hookup to Withrow, correct? That you had done a preliminary estimate of what the hookups to Withrow are separate, correct? Do you remember that approximate cost?
You're absolutely correct. would not account for any of the, running any of the force mains and such from these hamlets. If I remember correctly, the cost associated for Withrow is probably, I think it was around 3 million, I believe, to tie that hamlet in. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Yeah, more or less.
Okay, thanks.
And I'll go to Deputy Reeve Northcott and then Councillor Graham, and then back to my left.
If there was for an urgency to be able to tie in the community of Withrow, absolutely. Has there been like preliminary planning, and is that like on a must kind of do to be able to tie that hamlet into a wastewater system right now? Or is it just in the future will maybe need to be done?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking me, Deputy Reeve Northcott, as to where it sits in terms of priority?
Yeah, for the community of Withrow, yeah.
Give a little bit of history. When I first came on, the community did approach Clearwater County and presented their concerns. So we did a preliminary engineering study on tying Withrow into Leslieville and the costs associated with it. Now, the moment you, in this case, bring in Hamlet and their wastewater, and the moment you touch the lagoon itself, it needs to be upgraded. So that was was part of the costs associated with that as well. So the preliminary study was done and determined an estimate on the cost associated with managing each of the septic systems of the residents and bringing in a sanitary line along with a force main to the Leslieville lagoon. And at that time, it was a levy associated with the hamlet itself, an improvement levy. And so that cost was presented, what it would be to each resident. And then we left it with the community in terms of how they wanted to proceed. And at that time, there were differing opinions within the community, and that's where it was left. It didn't go any further. Since that time, we have not heard back from them in regards to their situation and them wanting to continue to pursue in that manner again. So it's hard to say how desperate their needs are in regards to tying in. I believe some of the residents have taken it upon themselves to upgrade their septic systems, and what it's going to come down to is an agreement with the community as a whole in regards to tying in. Now, having said that, once the Leslieville lagoon has been upgraded, we have that ability to tie in Withrow, Alhambra, Condor, even though Condor is good now for probably good 50 years, but the option is always there. But no matter what, once you choose to bring a hamlet in there, that Leslieville lagoon then needs to be upgraded, period. And so by doing this, we've taken care of that part of it. And then it's just going to come down to having those, monitoring these hamlets, Alhambra, Withrow, and continuing to have those discussions with the residents in regards to the potential of tying them in.
Okay, thank you. I think if it was a high priority for Withrow to have to be able to be tied in, I think the upgrade and also running the main lines and stuff like that to be at the community, and those projects could both be probably done at the same time if that sense of urgency was to come one day in the future where they needed to be tied in. But I think to better utilize the funding and stuff like that, I'd sort of like to wait and see if there's currently a functioning lagoon there, to wait and proceed with applying for grants to better utilize funding for that and taxpayers' dollars. Thank you.
And Councillor Graham, and then I'll go to Councillor Cermak.
Thank you, Vahid. I'd just like to address something that Councillor Ratcliffe said, and that's that it's a lot of money to spend where there's not a lot of people. I think that's a very unfair thing to say. We spend tons of money in Nordegg to develop Nordegg, and it's to build our county, but to say that these people don't deserve that because there's not a lot of people there is kind of boiled my blood a little bit. I think that's a very unfair thing to say. We spend multi-millions of dollars on nice to haves like paving roads, and this is something that needs to have people, like, we're in 2022, people should have clean drinking water in my opinion. And I just wanted to comment on that because I think even though there may not be a lot of people here, I think they deserve a high quality of life that everyone else enjoys in Clearwater County.
Thank you. I might just comment before I go to Councillor Cermak. You know, I said it before, one of the greatest things we're charged with here as a council is to provide for that safe community, and part of that is having those expectations of safety within your community, drinking water, that you're living in an area that's not going to make you sick to live there. I think that's very important, and that's why I think when we have a responsibility with our hamlets to actually provide that service. So I'll pass it along to Councillor Cermak.
Yeah, I'm about the money. I read all through this and I see some discrepancies in numbers and figures and stuff. We approved 7.4 million for this initially. Is that right?
I'd have to go back and look at my numbers. Courtney says the total budget including engineering and construction for 2022 and 2023 would then be 10 million, just over 10 million, which equates to an increase of just a little over 900,000. So it was probably just under around 9 million that we approved over the 2 years.
Okay, that's on this page 44, but on page 47 it says was within the 22 capital, the budget of 7,319,000 to complete engineering and construction. For the remainder of the project was within the 2023 capital budget.
Yeah, okay, just for clarification there. So the total budget, Councillor Cermak, that we had in place for this particular project for 2022 and 2023 for both construction and engineering was 9,651,762. The prior number that you see there, the 7 million, the budget at 7,319,000 to complete engineering and construction for the remainder of the project within 2023. So that number was for 2023. And then the 2,332,762 was for 2022. Okay. So those two numbers added up comes up to the 9,651,762. Now, once we received the tenders were put out and the bids were received, the bids came higher than our estimated amount. And due to the requirements of Alberta Marine Parks and such in terms of how we proceed with construction, there was an increase now in regards to the budget as a whole due to the bid coming in over budget to what we had budgeted, plus some additional engineering that needed to be done to, in essence, reverse 2022 and 2023. So we're taking that amount in 2023 and putting it into 2022, and the lesser amount goes into 2023. So all in all, when all is said and done, there's an increase of $958,462,000.66 to what we had originally budgeted over the 2 years.
Oh, so there added engineering fees to this that isn't shown here?
Yeah, there is. It was an increase of 145,000.
Oh, okay.
Additional.
Okay. Yeah. So we're looking at an increase of approximately 9.6 or about 960,000.
Yeah, $958,462.66. That is correct. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So would I be correct in assuming that was about a 12 or 13% increase over the original budget? and that we're anticipating another 3 to 4% at the end of July.
Potentially, yes, yeah.
And then, like many things, I think we've never been able to anticipate the price of oil and gas. The oil and gas industry being renewed, and those same construction people being drawn into projects. They're no longer engineering or civil engineering projects, they're more oil field related. So we're having, I think we can anticipate additional costs in the near future for any of our construction projects over what we had when we started to plan for them a number of years ago. Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
First, I want to deal with the Nordegg comparison. While it was taxpayer money that went into starting these projects in Nordegg, they've gone into the Nordegg Development Fund, and that is being largely recovered from lot sales. So at the end of the day, the cost for those services in Nordegg have not been borne by the taxpayers, where what we're looking at here is something that would be entirely borne by the taxpayers. And, you know, I look at the cost per household, and I find it quite high. So that's why I would like to hold out for provincial grants. I do have a question though, and that's about the water at Withrow. You mentioned that some of the residents there have upgraded their septic systems. Has that alleviated the problem? Like, do we have any water samples recently that show how serious the issue may be still in Withrow?
I'm unfamiliar with that, and I couldn't give you an answer on that one, Councillor Ratcliffe.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I may, just to be clear here with Council as well, that this funding for this project is coming out of our restricted surplus as well.
A question I would have too, other than Nordegg, all of our hamlets are on, their water systems are all privately owned, are they? So it would be up to the individual residents to test their wells and really determine whether their water was safe?
That is correct, yes. Yeah.
We don't require that as part of it?
No, that would be the landowner's responsibility, that's correct, yes.
But
The only one is Nordegg, that we have a water system which we monitor and test regularly. Yeah.
But within our growth hamlets of Condor and Leslieville, we maintain a wastewater system which was originally engineered to protect those wells, I believe. And do we have any, we don't really have any data to back up the safety of those wells because they are again, privately owned wells within that community?
That is correct, okay, yes.
Thank you for that. Councillor Swanson, please.
I know in the past, Reeve Lougheed and I have had the past council discussion, and the priority of this particular lagoon was raised, particularly because of the issues that was happening at the Rocky Lagoon at that particular point in time. That was pre them getting their grant. And understanding now that they've got their grant to upgrade their facility, that's wonderful. I think it's great, but it does not alleviate the work that still has to be done in Leslieville. So I'm in favor of option one and going ahead because, again, like you've pointed out, we have that already funded through restricted surplus, and there's no time like the present. And going forward, although I like the idea of getting a provincial grant, maybe that will be a part of the amalgamation process with the municipal affairs to say we need some funding to help with that particular lagoon, that if that amalgamation through those talks. So I would be in favor of option one.
And I'm going to go to Councillor Melhoff and then back to Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Reeve. I agree, and I also see the money that the province is putting into those two hamlets with those brand new schools. They obviously see a growth potential in those two hamlets. I also believe that they will take a look at the fact that we do have a restricted surplus that's already allocated for this. And that will potentially play a role in the grant potential. When they go, why do you need a grant when the money is sitting there? So we've allocated the funds, the province is putting money into those communities with those schools. To me, this is a logical next step forward.
Thank you, and Councillor Ratcliffe.
Thank you. I think the question that Reeve and I have been sort of knocking on the door here is, how recent is the issue with the water quality in Withrow?
Again, those are all private residences, so we don't have any data within Clearwater County administration that I'm aware of in regards to their water. It's up to the individual landowners to have their water tested.
But no one is calling us saying, I've got a problem with my well, with my water.
Not at this time, or most recently. We do get those calls every now and then, but not recently, no.
Yes, okay.
And I know the councillor from that particular division has her light on, so I'll see if she has a comment or has heard any feedback from her community.
They haven't reached out to me on this actually, but I know from previously that this is a concern. So if I was gonna make a motion if Councillor Ratcliffe wants to finish first, or if he wants to go after the motion.
Did you have a?
I had another question.
Okay,
which
please.
was to ask Chief Emmons if he has any historical information that would be pertinent here.
Mr. Emmons, please.
Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe, for the question. Reeve Lougheed. I do. I've dealt with residents out at Withrow where some private system, well, in Withrow, as Reeve Lougheed stated, all the systems are private. So we do rely on individuals reaching out to us. These are systems not under our jurisdiction or authority. They're governed by the province of Alberta, and they're maintained by the private landowners. So we truly are in a position of relying only on what we're told. And I have dealt with residents out there that have gotten into issues with their neighbors up the hill that have not maintained their systems and allowed them to overflow, which gravity takes over and it's put equal eye into their private water wells. I have not heard from those individuals in the past number of months, but I was, Councillor Ratcliffe, dealing with those individuals prior.
How long ago was that?
Off the top of my head, I'd say 2 years.
So quite recent. So fairly recent. Yes, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I might just comment as well. I think part of the reason that previous council, and I think why we're discussing upgrading this facility, was to give that security for our community, that there is a place that is going to be long-term, that is available for outside dumping of sewage or sewage reception, which was in question. I know our neighboring municipality is working hard to maintain that facility, but ultimately we do need to provide for our own community as well. So I think that was part of a solution that involved our other hamlets to be tied into to give future solutions to problems that may arise. I think it's good planning. I think it's looking to the future, and I think this is a moment that it probably won't be any cheaper in the future to do this. And we have been the benefit of many grants in the past for our infrastructure upgrades. So I would certainly support, I think it was item or solution 1. I would certainly support that now. Councillor Graham.
And that's the motion that I would like to make, is that council chooses option 1, that council awards the construction of the regional Leslieville wastewater treatment facility to Everest Construction Management as per recommendation from Magna Engineering Services Inc. based on the tender evaluation. The project award revised budget would be as follows. Would you like me to read those ones off? Should I?
I think probably
A, B, and C as listed.
Do we need additional, do you think we need additional detail in the motion? Or can we go as per staff recommendation?
Okay, that's my
Comfortable with
motion
that?
then.
I'm seeing nods, so. All right, further discussion on the motion before us. Again, further discussion on the motion before us. I will call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Brings us down to item 8, and I look across the room to Mr. Emmons for the CAO report.
Thank you, Reeve Lawhead. So the July 12th, 2022 CAO report. In recognition of the importance of an educated population to the future well-being of rural communities, the RMA established the RMA Scholarship Program in 1995. The RMA Scholarship Program is designed to encourage young rural Albertans to pursue further education, thereby enhance the ability of these young people to make meaningful contributions into their communities in subsequent years. A scholarship in the amount of $1,000 is presented to one successful applicant from each of the 5 districts. The 2022 application term will close August 31st. Municipal Affairs is seeking input on potential changes to the Municipal Government Act and the Local Authorities Election Act. The proposed changes relate to candidate eligibility, code of conduct for elected officials, privacy for voter information, and third-party advertising rules. Municipal Affairs is also consulting with the RMA on the proposed changes. Any changes would apply to municipalities in Alberta along with school divisions and Métis settlements. The survey is now available online until July 22nd. The annual Alberta Coordinated Action for Recycling Enterprise, CARE, conference takes place September 7th to 9th in Leduc. Recommended attendees are municipal elected officials, waste management employees, landfill operators, and recycle operators. Should any councillors wish to attend, a motion would be required.
And I see Councillor Swanson has a comment, question.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment in regards to that survey that Municipal Affairs has put out in regards to the MGA and the local authorities election. I did do the survey last week. It's very short to do. And in the comment section, I will just let you guys know that my comment was a 9-month campaign period is really not necessary like they did last year. Having it start January 1st and go through to October is actually quite exhausting as a resident. So I had made the suggestion, go back to 30 days or at the very least 60 days. I know in the bigger cities, Edmonton and Calgary, it's better off for their fundraising, but as far as smaller rural urban municipalities, it is a big headache. So anyways, I'm just letting you know that the survey is really easy to fill out.
Thank you for that. Mr. Emmons, anything?
Only Reeve Lawhead on item number 3. If any councillors would like to attend the CARE conference, looking for a motion on that.
Any interests? I'll go with Councillor Melhoff and then back to.
Thank you, Reeve. I will have to look at my schedule to know if I can attend or not, but I'm happy to make that motion and to allow anybody interested in attending that, and they can reach out to Tracy Lynn.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Any additional questions for our CAO? Councillor Swanson, please.
Just for future, it would be, maybe this might come up more in September when our org meeting is, and also maybe a discussion on our remuneration salary discussion. Because there's so many conferences available throughout the year, it would be nice to know kind of a list and what those particular conferences cost us. So that way we as individuals know what those costs could entail, and maybe it's an option of saying, I'm going to, this is my conference fund or conference portion of my salary, and I wish to do this, 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 and this, and leave the rest for, you know, others or whatever. So just a suggestion for maybe a fall discussion at some point, please.
Yes, thank you for that. I think it's always been something of mine that I think would be of value, so we understand the value we have really in sending people to these conferences and, you know, the ability to educate a council and then bring that information back to the membership is, I think we want to really maybe focus in on the importance and the expectations of each person going to those conferences as well. So thank you for that. Additional questions, comments? Looking then for a motion to accept the CAO report for information. Deputy Reeve Northcott, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. I'll move on to councillor reports and I'll start with, let's see, number 1.
Thank you, Reeve. I sent my note this morning. I apologize that it wasn't to you last night. It's been a little bit of a slower couple of weeks trying to enjoy some family time over the summer, which has been really nice. But we did get an opportunity to go to a presentation with Doug Griffiths and 13 Ways with the Rocky Chamber and the Rocky Council. I always like taking any opportunity to work with him. His insights and just his general presentation style are they're just fabulous, and he really understands the dynamic within our community. I think just because he likes it here so much that he really is able to put a lot of things in focus. We also did the MDP review, and please, to all residents, watch online, comment on it, email into the MDP review at clearwatercounty.ca your thoughts and any concerns you have, and look for those public consultation opportunities. We also did a Sundry Forest projects tour with Mountain View and the town of Sundry. That was fabulous. That facility, like, wow, the automation that's happening in that facility and just the general capacity that facility has, and the facility within our own communities. I look forward to going out and seeing the LVL that is partnered with them. Between the two of them, they are employing over 500 people, not to mention all of the part-time people and all of the other industries that they are impacting in our communities. So the level of importance that they place on the forest protection and how that they are being stewards for that is just, it's wonderful. And well, we met with Tom this morning, and it's just great to see them as involved in the community as they are. I also had my division tour with Mr. Emmons, and it was great to be able to discuss the history that he has within our community, and look at some of the projects that could benefit Division 1. So thank you very much, and hopefully you guys had a great couple of weeks as well.
Thank you. Questions for Councillor Melhoff? Thanks again. I'll go to Councillor Graham, please.
Thank you, Reeve Wahid. As per usual, Councillor Melhoff did a great job covering everything. Just a couple of things to add. I would definitely concur with everything she said about Doug. I really enjoy working with him as well. I think he's wonderful, and he volunteered his time to come and give us that presentation too, which was really kind of him. And you touched on the MDP review. I'm nervously looking forward to that being released. I'm really looking forward to the input from the residents, because it's a very important piece of document. And the West Fraser tour you touched on as well. I think talking about their stewardship and reforestation, they're planting their 130th million tree this year, which is pretty cool. We all heard that. And also something that's not really, it's related to the county, but I saw a video on Facebook of one of our fire service trucks that was pulled over, and they were visiting with a little kiddo. They had their lights and stuff on for them, and probably made that kiddo's week. And I thought that was pretty cool. It's nice to see positive things about the county, and it just goes to show what great people we have working here. And that is everything.
Thank you. Questions for Councillor Graham? Well, again, thank you, and I'll move along to Deputy Reeve Northcott.
Yeah, for councillor portion of my life was a little bit slower the last couple of weeks. I don't have anything to report at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Thank you, Reeve. I'll just add a few comments to some of the things already said. Certainly the presentation from 13 Ways was inspiring, and certainly helped me focus on some of the directions we need to be moving ahead with. The bad thing is that all these ideas keep swirling in my head for a couple of days after. So, yeah, anyway, the Sunry Forest Products tour was quite interesting. The Reeve and I, with our technical backgrounds, were usually tail end Charlies because we wanted to understand how all this automation was working and what was going on in some of those lines. The number of people I saw actually hands-on with the product was amazingly low. So it just shows how they use automation to be more efficient and establish their market share. Yeah, it was a great tour. Last week, I went to the CPAC meeting, which was canceled due to lack of quorum. And then yesterday I went to a Crime Watch sort of regional meeting in Lacombe, where the Crime Watch groups are struggling with having volunteers as well. After COVID and things opening up, the support from the people, the volunteers, just isn't there, and they are looking at shutting down. So I believe both groups provide a valuable service in some areas to the community, so I hope that we can find ways to keep those groups going. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions for Councillor Ratcliffe? Well, again, thank you, and I'll move to Councillor Cermak. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed after a vacation? Okay.
Yeah, sort of. And I'm gonna let Ms. Watson explain what happened with senior housing. I was on the meeting, but I kept getting kicked off because of the communication problem we have up in the northern part of our province, in the northern part of our country. But since I've got back, it's great to see the new bridge going in south of Caroline on the Caroline South Road. I would like to have a little more information on what's happening in the James River Bridge area where that medical group home is going in, or whatever they're trying to call it. I did talk to Jody at Jason Nixon's office. She said that right now it's in the hands of the Alberta Health, that it will be there for the next few months for sure. There won't be anything happening. I also have residents phoning me saying that there's being work done there. If there's work being done there, did we issue building permits for that? I'm concerned. My residents are really concerned about what's happening down there. And then I've had a few phone calls, and this is kind of really out there, about a gopher problem in our hay fields and our pastures. I have residents phoning me that they are losing acres of arable land to gophers. We supply, or we can get some gopher poison, I guess, or the 3 or the 4 that I talked to said that it's more feed than poison. Is there anything that we can lobby the government to go back to the old system or go to some system that can eradicate this problem instead of what we're doing? We're just letting the gophers run wild and they're feeding them with this poison stuff. Do you have any answers for that, Rick?
And I'll turn it across to Mr. Emmons. I know that in the southern part of the province at one period of time, they did actually have an emergency approval of an older poison for that. I'll just comment as well. I have noticed that on my own property as well, that the gophers seem to be much more active this year than most. I don't know whether it's they're hopping out after COVID or what the deal is. Mr. Emmons, please.
Thank you, Reeve Lahid. Yes, Councillor Cermak, with the land care restrictions under Alberta Environment, the historic strychnine has been restricted, and an equally effective product hasn't been marketed since, in my opinion. As a farmer, I eradicate them just with a .22 caliber, and I've found that about the most successful, and even gopher traps at the end of the holes. And I stake them out in my hayfield and find them that way as well. Those have been about my most successful, but any of the products on market these days aren't to the same caliber. I don't know how successful a lobby would be to the province, because they have tested that and found the old product not to be very environmentally friendly, which is why they eliminated it. In regard to the first issue you brought up, it's my understanding that if there's development happening, it is not without approval. The approval application was denied by this organization, so I can definitely get planning to follow up on that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
And did you have a question for?
Just was going to be a comment at the Municipal Planning Commission level. That has currently been tabled, waiting for our partners at the province. We felt that it wasn't appropriate for us to give approval of any kind without hearing from our provincial partners. So that is currently tabled at the Municipal Planning Commission level.
Yeah, that is what I was told by Jason Nixon. But it is a major concern down there in my area. Thank you.
Additional questions for Councillor Cermak? Thank you. I'll move along to Councillor Swanson, please.
Just to let everybody know that I'm on the subcommittee of CAPE called the Transportation Logistics Task Force. There was a draft report that was submitted to our subcommittee on the Connections Corridor. The consultant has taken all the feedback and will be bringing a final report in August, and those recommendations from the subcommittee will be going to the CAPE board in September, so I will share that as that comes forward. The invitation from the Rocky Chamber, again, for the 13 ways. I echo all the comments. It's always, it feels like more like a group hug than anything. It's always awesome. Again, the tour for West Fraser Plant Century was very interesting. The one thing I learned that I didn't realize is that their power generation at their pulp plant north was super interesting, and maybe that's that collaboration there's possibilities that it could exist elsewhere, so I'm pleased. And then on Thursday, I did go down to Calgary to the Brownlee Barn Burner Stampede Hospitality Evening. Councillor Hutchinson from the town and I attended. We were there for about 2.5 hours and got rained on, but that was a good thing because it was well attended, and it was nice to see friendly faces again. Thanks.
Questions for Councillor Swanson? Well, thank you very much, Council. I think that was excellent reporting. Covered many of the things that I thought were important. I definitely will echo the comments around being able to be with West Fraser's tour was exceptional for me. I got to see where technology was and is being used, and that's endless fascination for me. I did get the opportunity to address the graduating class of 2022, the last graduating class from David Thompson High School. So a bittersweet moment. I graduated from there many years ago, and it was nice to see a strong, capable graduating class come through. I think that school has served our community extremely well, and I hope the new schools will serve equally well into the future. Also had a chance to attend and bring greetings on behalf of the county at the Canada Day celebration at the Historic Park. Although the skies did open up, it was a hearty crowd that was out there, and it was nice to see people enjoying that kind of celebration again, and to see representation from not only all walks of life, but our First Nations there was, I think, a strong presence. It's a good way to bring people together and celebrate who we are. With that, I would be looking for a motion to accept Councillor Reports for information. I think Councillor Milhoff was first, and so all those in favor? And that's carried. There is a number of correspondence items that have been circulated. Was there any one of those or any number of those that were particularly important that we want to go over? There was one, I believe, that Mr. Emmons will speak to.
Thank you, Reeve Lawhead. For Council's consideration, just item 9.2, the call to action to the Government of Alberta. Administratively, we've received correspondence a few times in the past, and I got some additional clarification from Council. If Council was interested in joining this, all that would be required is a motion directing administration to forward our logo to this organization so we could be included in supporting the RCMP in the province of Alberta. So I just wanted to bring that to Council's attention.
And I see, I'm going to go to Councillor Graham first. Yeah.
Thank you, Reeve Lawhead.
Questions, comments, please.
That was what I wanted to comment on, so that's perfect. I personally fully support the RCMP and would love to, if Council agrees, see us support this. That is all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Milhoff.
Mine was involving a different correspondence, so are we looking for, are you making the motion to that effect, Councillor Graham, or?
So, yeah, I guess if there were general comments, I know Mr. Emmons brought this one item, if we maybe can confine to that one, and then we'll look at the remainder of them. Any further discussion on the call to action letter? I don't know who is first here. Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Okay. Thank you, Reeve. Some of the wording in this bothers me a little, but I believe we all supported a motion for this at RMA as well. And I have some doubt about getting too politically involved, but go along with the rest of council.
Thank you, and I'll go to Councillor Cermak.
I would love to make the motion that the RCMP stay on and we send the logo to them.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion, I might just comment, I know that at the RMA, it was kind of an impromptu moment, but you saw the level of support from the floor of that venue, and definitely I think even the people that are suggesting, even the politicians are suggesting we review the RCMP with, potential to a provincial police force. I think they all appreciate the value that the RCMP have provided to our communities over the years. Probably looking at always reviewing things, but I personally would support a letter from this council that indicates that they support this call to action. So I believe Councillor Cermak has a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Any additional comments, questions around some of the correspondence? Councillor Milhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. My question was around the Yellowhead County correspondence and how that will affect our county directly, just being our northern neighbor. It looks like this is allowing some of our residents to access some of the Yellowhead County recreation funding. Am I reading these policies accurately?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Milhoff. Mr. Martinson, Director of Ag and Community, is following up with Yellowhead County for further clarification. But at this time, they have done a review of our applicable policies and procedures. And it's their assessment that this request doesn't conflict with us, although they are reaching out to Yellowhead for further clarification. There is some interpretation in this letter that could go either way. But at this time, it sounds like we're reaching out into their municipality and their funding, and people from Yellowhead are coming here using amenities, and we're funding. It doesn't sound like it contradicts any of our policies or procedures.
Excellent. It to me sounds like a great opportunity for collaboration on our northern border between those two, between our municipality and Yellowhead. So I look forward to hearing the follow-up from Director Martin.
Additional questions? Councillor Cermak, please.
Are we done with that one?
I guess it's a specific, yeah.
Okay. I would just like to make reference to Jason Nixon's letter for the Village of Caroline. It sounds like there's lots of money available for a senior housing in Caroline. I don't know what the rest of the council feels about that. I don't think that the housing people or the Chamber of Commerce has ever asked this council if the land out there is available for this use. So I think that's one step that we need to make so that, yes. And I think that if it doesn't go ahead, I think there will be somebody come in and do this. And I would not like to see another county coming into it or some other business from outside of our county. I would just as soon see our county or some business in our county step forward and want to help this seniors lodge go in there. I have asked Nixon's office, Honorable Jason Nixon's office, for a letter retaining to the wastewater handling in Caroline. I have been told that wastewater was designed for 1,500 people. We have less than 500 using it, and it might take a little bit of aeration to get it right up to perfect standards, but it doesn't look like there's any problem with water supply or wastewater for this facility. That's kind of my comments about the letter.
And I'll go to Councillor Swanson.
You bring up a good point, Councillor Cermak, in regards to the property that the county owns within the Clearwater. I think that would be a discussion for the ICC group, and then bring it back to council maybe at a strat plan meeting or whatever in the near future. So we could have that discussion on a council as a whole at a future strat plan meeting. I agree.
And thank you for that, Councillor Cermak. As you know, there are many dynamics happening around the community of Caroline. I think much of it relies on the will of that community and what they want to see moving forward. So I think Clearwater County is always receptive to hearing those concerns and being part of solutions. I think that's what we've demonstrated so far. Councillor Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. It's great that Minister Nixon is in support of this project, but this letter does not come with any actual financial support. So that's a whole other division of the government. I worry that this letter is a placation, not an actual stamp of we're giving you the $6 million that you need to accomplish that portion of the grant section of this project. So that's my only concern, is that's awesome. He's like, yeah, okay, this is great, I support this project, but it doesn't come with any actual financial stamp or even his walking down the hall to get that department's financial stamp. So that's my only concern with this particular letter.
Thank you for that. I know the ministry keeps changing up there, but I think right at the moment he has the bags of money in hand, so it might be a good time to strike while the iron's hot. Councillor Cermak.
You just made my comment because, and since then I have received a little bit of a letter from Reg Dean and Sam Smolden. It says that Sam figures the number for that building is way too high. He figures 17 million for that we cut down the 8 houses or the 8 units that are full-time. We cut that out because it's not close enough to a hospital to have those there. He figures that the actual number is about 12 million. And so whoever has to come in and authorize or back the money that would be loaned would be under 4 million. That we would have, that whoever would have to back it would be in about the $3 to $4 million range. And he also goes ahead and says that there's been some units, a 22 unit that was put in the Sinsika one. It was a 34 unit and it got its money from the government. And I take it Mr. Nixon is the one that doles out the money there, and he did that one. And he said that there is money available for the Caroline project too.
Thank you. Councillor Melhoff.
Thank you, Reeve. When I asked Mr. Smolden, he had said that he had never been successful in getting all of the funding that he's asked for before. So then we would have to consider, if we were to take it on as our project, we would have to ensure that we're looking at it being us taking on the entire project, not just the portion that they're stating, because he even said he has never been successful in getting all of the money that they ask for. So it wouldn't just be what they're asking whoever is gonna own that project. It would also be potentially whatever the government doesn't provide. So I'd rather us look at it, if we were to take it on, with the understanding that it could be the 17 million or 12, provided they remove those. Not just the 4 to 6 that is being stated. I think it'd be unrealistic for us to think that the government would be giving the entire bag of money, so to speak, even though that'd be nice.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion? Councillor Swanson.
We're done now. I just wanted to acknowledge that the 9.6 letter back to the shadow ministers and deputy shadow ministers of rural economic development and broadband strategy. I'm happy with the letter that we've returned to them. So
thank you for that. Any additional questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to accept the correspondence.
That would be perfect, thank you. Additional discussions, questions? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Brings us down to item 10. That is notices of motion. Would there be any notices of motion at this time? Seeing none. And I don't believe we had any closed session. So that brings us to the end of the day. I think I've reached almost a record of getting us through before the witching hour, I guess. Anyway, looking for a motion for adjournment. Deputy Reeve Northcott. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much for joining today.